Okay, we'll resume the council meeting for the 25th of June. Do we have any conflicts of interest? No apologies, no public forum, no late items. So I want to start the proceedings with a welcome to our new interim iwi rep for Rangitani, Jack Morris. To those people watching online, we've already had a mihi for Jack and a bit of kai, but I want to, on behalf of the councillors around the table, welcome you, Jack. You come to us with hugely impressive credentials, and I know you'll very quickly become an important part of our council, joining, as you do, Robin as our two iwi reps. Robin's influence in his relatively brief time with council has been huge. And I know that you've said that Joe, before you as the Rangitani rep, had a huge influence on our council, and I'm sure that you'll follow down the same path, Jack. When I looked at your CV, Jack, I think you've got all bases covered, really. You've clearly had a wealth of experience across governance, commercial investment and executive management, particularly in the iwi post-settlement and charitable trust sectors. You hold the very important post, of course, of Rangitani Wairapa co-chair, and the fact you've held several CEO and director roles in asset holding companies and foundations, overseeing investment strategies across a range of asset classes, including fisheries, property and infrastructure, and your strong background in asset management means that really, in terms of being around this table, you're the perfect fit. So we really do welcome you, and I know as well that you've been recently recognised with the 2024 Apopo Supreme Infrastructure Management Excellence Award, and infrastructure, of course, is a very big part of council work. So, as I say, I think you've become a perfect fit for us, Jack, and I'm confident that you'll have a similar influence to Robin around our council table. So, welcome. And I just wonder if you would like to just perhaps say just a few words so that the public maybe can hear you.
Just to mihi to everybody this morning, thank you for those kind words, Gary. And I guess, like many talented peers, you've managed to get me on the good side of you from the outset. So that's really I'm very appreciative of that. But once again, just to I think mihi to the great foundation that Joe Hayes put in place. He did some great work for our aurunanga. I, like Robin, and others, hold a very important role in making sure that iwi interests are representative, and we're working with the council to achieve our outcomes. Although I've got, thank you for saying it, an impressive CV, there's always lots to learn, and I look forward to working with other councillors to do that. Thank you once again for the kind welcome and the kind words, Gary. Yes, just very briefly, my family has been here, as Robin will tell you, quite some time. My grandmother was the late Pani Brightwell. Her father was Ihaya Whakamauru. He was a descendant of Tiri Tamani Tikaro, who was one of the first negotiators with Joseph Masters to establish what is now Masterton. So, so I'm keen to live up to those prominent and important ancestors that I have. But once again, thank you, and look forward to making a contribution to the council.
Thank you, Jack, and it's pretty simple on council. If you want to say something, you just put your hand up. And there are some councillors around here, it's hard to get a word in. Right, we go to page 6, confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting on May 14. Somebody prepared to move and second. Move Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Bowyer. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Page 28, confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting on May 21. Mover, Councillor Lennox, seconded Councillor Johnson. All in favour there.
Sorry, just to note a correction on page 19 that the agreement of the meeting, the motion was to provide 32 hours a month of staff. It should be up to. Small deal, but that was the motion. Up to 32 hours a month.
we could make that correction. Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Page 34, confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting held on June 11. I'll move. Got a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Holmes. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, page 43. Roading Procurement Strategy 2025 to 2028. And that's Kane. Kane can come up. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, councillors. This report today is just seeking your endorsement for the Masterton Roading Procurement Strategy for 2025 to 2028. It's our fourth review with a 3-year review cycle. It's been informed by the 2024 17A procurement service delivery review and recent market analysis we did. It supports a long-term plan and Waka Kataui's procurement requirements. So in summary, the strategy describes the context of the procurement program, the procurement environment and market out there, the procurement approach and delivery to the work program over the next 3 years. So the strategy ensures compliance with Waka Kataui's procurement manual and supports the competitive market process, the positions of Masterton's District Council's work program. So I recommend Council endorse the strategy, and I'll take questions.
Thank you, Kane. Right, questions for Kane? Councillor Helena, then Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, thank you, Kane. Just wondering when that road prioritisation framework will be available.
Sorry, Councillor.
Your report refers to that prioritisation framework, roading prioritisation.
Is that in the strategy? Actual
In the
discovery?
report, yeah.
Can you just point out the page?
Yeah, no, I haven't got the page number, sorry. I know we've spoken about it previously, given some of the issues we've got with roads and climate change and sea level rise and so forth. And I'm just wondering where we're at with that prioritisation strategy. If it's the same strategy.
So I think Karen's got her policy team's working on a roading prioritisation project. And the first one off the rank is the Masterton Resilience Study, but maybe Karen could say a little more on that.
So we are just working through the scoping on touching back with the Masterton funding that we've received there for the roading and how we might progress that in line with a lot of other broader strategic work that we're doing that the central government is working on at the moment, and in line with our work alongside the regional grouping for climate change. So I can talk about a little bit about that in my report further down the track. We will be reporting back to the council on our proposals for particularly around Matai Corner and then what that might mean as part of the broader strategic framework.
That'd be great.
So that will be quite short, in a short amount of time. That's in the next month.
Next month, thank you.
Councillor Gorman.
Possibly I know it may come up later, but is there, you recall the paper you did about the 2%, 9% targets on rehabilitation and resealing, and I know the Auditor General's Office is looking at councils that have fallen short of that. It's not just us. When will you be able to tell us what that, I just did some extrapolations on it, which I'm sure you've seen, so it's somewhere between 2 and 8 million shortfall. When will we have a conversation about that? Because it to me is a bit of an elephant in the room if we're underspending by quite a considerable amount on roading. And I know it causes all sorts of problems for who pays for it, but I do believe we should be at least talking about the problem at some stage. So can you just tell us when we see some concrete details, because I didn't know the mix between chip seal and hot mix, and so
Yep.
is it 4 million a year or what?
Yep. So we've done some modelling based on a few scenarios. One is the one we've set in the long-term plan, which is the 1% rehabilitation, and it's between 5 and 7% resurfacing numbers, and we're on track to deliver that with the current funding.
7%.
5 to 7%. So we sometimes don't get to 7% depending on what's in the program versus AC versus CHIP. So we've done modelling in that scenario, which is our LTP scenario. We've also done the modelling on the 2% and the 9% that the government have set as a high level benchmark, and they've asked us to look at what that would cost. So they're available in a report, but it's just been reviewed right now still with my asset manager, and she's just going through that right now before it's released.
I think the appropriate time to do that is through the annual planning cycle, so we can prepare ourselves for that conversation, if you like, in the next calendar year.
I'll be writing that into the asset management plan too, which goes towards the LTP cycle. So a lot of that work we do in modelling gets brought into the asset management planning system, and we use that for how we work through our cost-benefit scenarios and roading and what's going to work in terms of the long term and whether we're on track to deliver.
My own thought was that in the wording of this annual plan, there should be mention made of such a big expense that is being deferred, because it puts, to me anyway, and I know to a lot of people, it puts everything else in some sort of shadow. If that underspend is 4 million a year, it helps frame discussions on a few other things we're spending money on or about to.
It is very much dependent on the funding from NZTA, isn't it?
Well, we work in 3-year cycles, so we go back in 2027 for more funding from the government.
Yes, but if we don't apply for rehabilitation and resealing funding, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but they weren't the primary things that were knocked back by NZTA. If we don't apply, I mean, we won't get, and we didn't apply. And I'm not suggesting here today trying to find a solution to it. I just would like the problem to be acknowledged. I mean, if for nothing else, the rural ratepayers have had a bit of a steep rates rise ride, and exactly what I'm talking about is going to make it even wilder. Doesn't mean to say it shouldn't be talked about and acknowledged, because if we're underspending on roading, we all know history of council is down the track, whoops, we've got a problem.
Yeah, can I suggest that we bring something back in the next calendar year?
We did acknowledge that in the LTP. I remember you asked for that statement to be written in there, and we wrote that statement exactly as you asked, and so that has been acknowledged for the next 3 years.
Yes, that's true, and I thank you for putting that there. But this is an annual plan. It has an awful lot of talk about where we're at, what we've done, what's planned for the next year. It's just such an important thing. It's the biggest single. It's the biggest single.
I'm happy to put the same statement in then.
Yes.
From the LTP into our annual plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be appreciated.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you. Kate, I note in your summary statement, we talk about how the team now shares working office space with a contractor, excuse me, and staff. Do you feel this is conducive to a good working relationship, considering that these are people we may have to have the hard conversation with every now and then? What's your opinion on the actual working relationship, and specifically around those hard conversations there?
With the contractor, Councillor?
Pardon?
With the contractor, sorry?
In the team now shares working office space with our contractor. in the summary statement?
in the summary statement.
1, 2, third paragraph.
So that's in regards to the occupancy that we have down at Higgins, and it's actually a really common practice, and that's about building relationships and having that high trust model so that you can have those open and honest conversations without the sense that there is some kind of hidden agenda.
So we're down at their site, they're not here.
They are not here. On the odd occasion, Kmore had one person who has a bit of a hot spot down there in their offices.
No, thank you.
Councillor Hunt.
Kane, what a huge report. Thank you. I don't know.
The strategy, yeah.
Took ages to go through it all, but I've got some queries.
Yep.
One thing, I'm really concerned about the roading costs for rural people. You know, it's double the rate increase for our people this year is double. So that concerns me. But I'm just wondering if when you tender, there's mentioned here at the States there's two big companies, there's Higgins and the possibility that Downers and Fort Hogan, but Downers would like to come in. What is the chance with our tender? I'm not convinced that our tendering system's right, because our cost of our extraction of everything and delaying a road seems to be really high. And I appreciate the roads on the rural roads, especially out near the coast, are much harder to handle than roads in town. So the other thing, you mentioned also that the shortage of metal. I'd like to see some arrangement. I've mentioned this before with the regional council with regards to river metal, but I also think that eventually we will be doing something at Kaituna with water storage, and there's no reason why at all that we couldn't be actually putting diggers in there, digging metal out, forgetting about the storage at the moment, just making a hole and selling that metal to the companies and trying to create an income from it. So, and there was one other thing that I had. And the other big issue, of course, is the road safety issue. That the costing of road safety is horrendous, and hopefully it's going to be pruned. Do you see that happening?
So the first question was around the Tier 1 contractors. So when we go to market, we don't just exclude Tier 1, so it is open to anyone who can deliver the spec and what the contract's asking for. And there are examples around the country where some of the smaller contractors are getting together and becoming more of an alliance style bid for them, and they've won contracts. So it's not exclusive. It's not exclusive of just Fulton Hogan Higgins. They just are the contractor in this region set up to deliver the best value for money at the moment, and they seem to always have the best value for council in terms of delivering on the ground. So the answer to your metalling, commercially, it's a contractor thing, I think, to deliver the aggregate, and I guess there's been discussions, I think, with regional council about winning more metal in the river, but they need to be led by the contractor really to get. And I guess if we want to sell metal, I guess there's an option there as well to talk to the contractor, but it's just a matter of opening up that dialogue, I guess, with the contractor.
There's one other, the 70-30 split.
That's to do with the procurement
Between
evaluation.
rural and
the rates. So yeah, I guess this is a strategy in terms of procurement. It's not a rates policy, and it's not something I get involved in. It's something probably more David needs to discuss. Yeah, it's a policy around how we distribute the cost of roading across the district, and not a roading function as such as a finance function.
There's one other question was the new type of seal that we were given a lecture on a few weeks ago. We still need to tee up a meeting.
Yeah, so I've done some research on that, and I'm happy to talk to you about that.
Councillor Bowyer, then Councillor Johnson.
Okay, just one little thing. Page 80, on the summary of forecast, item 341, minor improvements. It's quite lumpy.
Can I just get my computer and just get it? Oh, I'm sorry.
It won't be a specific question. It's pretty generalistic.
Oh, actually, I might
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, so it's just under minor improvements. You see the funding's very lumpy. We go from 950 up to 5.5 million. In the future, will we be able to get a bit of a rundown as to why the jump is here?
And that's in the minor improvements category, is it? That I think is to do with the resilience funding at Matakona. Yeah. So this needs to be reassessed again in the next bid, and had Matakona it, which is why it was up and down, and there were like big blocks of funding in the minor improvements area. So it'll be reassessed and brought back to council next year when we develop them.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Kane. Just to follow up on what Councillor Goodwin said, the difference between what we've budgeted for with the percentages and what the Gold Star Waka Kotahi goal is between 2 and 8 million. And so it'd be really nice to be in a position at some stage that that's narrowed down. If we spent this much extra, what would the shortfall be? If we spent that much extra, whilst we're aware of rates all the time, we don't want to fall behind on our roading to the extent that it becomes a problem further down the track. So when you come back to us, Maz and Kane, will you have a better idea of...
So the modelling is modelling, but it does have a cost associated with it.
Yeah.
So it's easy to tell the difference between the two scenarios. There's a cost between the two that's in the report. Yeah,
Okay.
so it's available. Yeah.
Councillor Nelson.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Kane. Just for Councillor Goodwin, were you suggesting that there's a shortfall in what we should be spending as per sort of government regulations or suggestions for roading?
That's what the Auditor General is going to be looking at, because that's what NZTA recommends. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what came out in discussion with the Auditor General. That was the NZTA recommendations, like 1% rehabilitation. Correct me if I'm wrong, but roads roads don't last 100 years.
They don't last 100 years.
Sorry, that was a cheap trick. Either way, the Auditor General said that he is going to be looking into those councils that are falling short of those standards. There's more than one. It's not just us. And I just think that some, as Councillor Johnson said, good on the CE for including that issue in the annual plan, but it would be neat if a budget, even an estimate, 2 to 8 is loose. And I don't know what it is, if it's 3, 4, 5. But it would be nice if there could be a number put on it. Because, look, at the end of the day, there's no beating about the bush. Some people would say, if you're going to spend an extra $3 million a year running your town hall and you wired a house, maybe we should be at least talking about spending that money on roading. Just to put it bluntly.
Councillor, can I suggest that we bring something back in the new calendar year, showing the model of, what NZTA are recommending, what you have currently instructed us to perform under, what the gap is, and maybe, if we went from 2%, say, to 3%, what that would look like, 4%, etc. Yep. Just bring some information back to help aid discussion.
Councillor Nelson, I think.
Please, a very elaborate answer.
Sorry, just the target.
Got a tandem going.
That's great, Maz.
Yeah. And so if parts of road that shouldn't be remedied aren't remedied or it's delayed, does that cause more accelerated deterioration than there would be otherwise?
Yes, so the asset deterioration curve with age gets it's parabolic, it gets worse as you leave it longer. So it can accelerate. You can see it on the highway in some of the sections in Greyton and Carterton right now where it's at end of life and it starts breaking up and deteriorating quite quickly.
Yeah, so it's not funding it or not addressing it now, it's greater to
And you create a
accelerate
bow wave,
deterioration.
yeah.
If more funding was available, would there be the contractors available to do the work? If we met the standards that Councillor Goodwin was referring to?
Yep, there seems to be enough contractors available out there now. Yep.
Okay. So prioritisation around roading would be really beneficial.
It's a long game, so you just program more, a little bit more each year and catch up. It's not a one-hit year, it's just a long game. You just keep...
Ongoing prioritisation would be really beneficial.
Yep.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Kane, in recent days I've been involved in 2 quite long meetings with mayors from basically all over the country, and the roading thing has been a huge... I mean, what we're explaining here, every other mayor's saying. So there's hardly an area in New Zealand that hasn't got this problem. And one of the things that's come up, and it's come up here around this table, is forestry and what the damage that it did to our roads. Where are we at with the whether we'd have a look at that in terms of charging?
Yeah, again, it's a piece of work that I'll need help from the policy team and the finance team, because it sets rules around take for rates on land or a levy, depending on what system you want to go to or want to look into. So it's again another item of work that I think Karen will have to talk to in terms of programming and timeframes.
I can just add to that part of the justification has to be the impact on the roads, and so we have to be able to have some measurement of the logging traffic and the impact that those trucks have on any particular piece of road, so that there's evidence that we can support our case for an additional levy on forestry, and that it can be robust enough to stand up in court if it's challenged. So it's both a physical survey of information of the roads and robust formulas that we can apply in a rating sense to end up with forest owners contributing a greater share of the roading costs, which is what the council is intending. But to do that, we have to have robust evidence, and part of that is Kane's staff surveying that impact on the roads, and it's not a quick process. There's a great deal of information needs to be gathered.
But we are part of that conversation with the other councils, and yeah.
Yes, we've included it within our work programme for next year, and we've done some initial scoping with the other 2 councils in the area. We're not looking specifically at forestry trucks though. We have broadened out the scoping to look at all heavy vehicles. Tara are currently working on that model, and we're attracted to that model from a principles basis really. It's the damage to the road caused by all heavy vehicles.
Thank you. Jack.
Kia ora, Kane. Thank you for the report. It seemed very comprehensive. 2 questions from me. I want to commend the initiatives taken with respect to providing a wairarapa market lens on procurement. Whenever we see initiatives that are creating businesses, they're creating competition and add value to council procurement, it's fantastic to see. So I want to commend you on that. But my questions are, can you just do a quick step through as to what those initiatives are in terms of those procurement initiatives? And then my second question is more broadly about, about having an understanding of your asset management maturity and how that's currently classified, if that makes sense.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, thank you.
So we've been working together on the 17A review, which is a service delivery review last year across the Karana and Waraka one. So we're on the same page, so to speak, in that sort of area. I'll be sharing this procurement strategy with them once it's been endorsed today, if it is, with council. And we look to hopefully align our procurement of a major contract like the renewal of the maintenance contract, which is basically everything they do down in South Waipakata is through the maintenance contract. They don't do a lot of other stuff outside of it. So we're looking to sort of align our procurement and in terms of timing to go out to the market with them. Also, we were looking to try and combine our specifications and base of payment and contract style exactly the same across the Wairarapa. So it's basically apples for apples in both areas. There's no different contract styles in the region. So they're the conversations that are happening right now with them right now. The asset maturity is available in our AMP. In the asset management plan, there's a section in the asset management plan on how we've assessed it and worked through maturity, and the questions are basically the same as the Auditor General's advice, which he gave to all asset managers across the country. So it follows that sort of approach. So that answers your question, Jack?
Just supplementary question. So how do we stack up?
Okay, yeah, no, we're good. We're out of 69 councils, I think. Our asset management plan just had just been gone for a review, and it's I think 17 in amongst them with the reviewers that looked at them, and we're a fairly medium council. We're not like AT Transport, has spent hundreds of thousands. Wellington spent $500,000 on their AMP last time round, so we do well. We punch well above our weight.
Thank you.
Councillor Goodwin, did you want to say something?
Just on that forestry issue, I was just, I suppose, a little alarmed to hear that we're looking at all heavy traffic, because my understanding was we were specifically, inspired by Wairoa, looking at a forestry differential, and if that was applicable to take some of the load of sheep and beef, for instance, or other rural users. And my understanding was we were progressing that, but what you said sounds like it's not being progressed. Specifically,
So we're at
forestry differential.
we're at the very early stages of scoping, and we would need to go back as part of the first part of the project. We'll be looking at the court decisions around Wairoa and specifically around the forestry differential, but we're looking at that as part of a broader action, because the justification for that differential has so far been impact on the road and not necessarily on the broader social implications. And so if it is the impact of the road, then we would need to consider all of the impact on the road by all heavy vehicles. However, like I say, we're at a very early stage of that scoping, so we will develop that further and we'll come back to the council on what our recommendations are for moving ahead. But at the moment, we're working on that basis that it's broader, and if we have to narrow it, we will do.
Yes, because whilst we acknowledge that we've seen some reports that point out that you would really need, to be fair, a differential of 30 to 1, we'd only be suggesting 8 or 10 to start with, and looking at these, recovering these costs. And we had those conversations. And in our LTP, when we looked at the roading expenditure, there were 4 rural highlights of expenditure, and forestry was mentioned for all of those. So I just hope we don't, I hope that can be accelerated. And I'm sure other councils, I believe Tararoa is looking at it. I'm sure there's lots of councils around New Zealand looking at it, but it's a major one. If we were to spend more on our roads, which we've discussed, one way of lessening the load on the rural people is to apportion the cost, obviously, to the forestry problem.
So just to clarify, forestry has always been mentioned in terms of the impact of the road from the heavy vehicles, and so that's why we're taking a principled approach in these early stages. If we're looking to focus on those social aspects that have also been mentioned around our land being turned into forestry rather than from agriculture, then we would need to consider how we take that forward and what is the principled way of doing that.
Because we also need to take into account the likes of 365 movements of full laden milk tankers using the same road. So those are things that we need to consider when we look at the forestry.
That's true, and again, I mean, gosh, it was only one comment, but we did get an excellent comment from a rural member pointing out that those dairy vehicles are not travelling anywhere near the distances on our roads as some other vehicles. Dairy farms tend to be very close to the state highway.
All right, I'll move the recommendation on page 43, that we approve the revised roading procurement strategy. Somebody second it. Senator Councillor Bowyer. Any further discussion? Councillor Nelson.
I was going to ask a question to Kane, but it would have been kind of a bit unfair, so I won't ask you the question, Kane, because I'm going to put you in the spot. But I just wonder if, further down the track, if we had a local road stone wheel initiative by government, how we would fit, when we hear about this underfunding that we're doing, almost deliberately. And this is one of our big things that we take care of, but it doesn't seem, despite the hard work of people like Kane, that we're addressing it as we should. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. As I said, I think every council in New Zealand's got exactly the same problems. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. We go to page 81. Thank you, Kane. The adoption of the Part 6 Traffic Masterton Schedule and Statement of Proposal for Consultation. Matt Steele.
Kia ora everyone. So this is a continuation essentially of the discussion we had in December last year around parking in Masterton, and as part of that the council resolved to not increase the parking charge area in Masterton, but we would have a look at some other ways to address issues in hotspot areas. And so this is where we're coming back with a proposal to change 3 areas of parking, but the proposal is to go and consult with the community on these changes, to get their viewpoints on these changes, so we can come back and inform you of where we think we should go with that. So the 3 areas are introducing time limits to hotspot areas. Those hotspot areas are Dixon Street, outside Queen Elizabeth Park, in that area. It is Kirapuni, particularly it's the Queen Street shopping area bit of Kirapuni, and it is also First Street and Lansdowne, so the Lansdowne shopping village. We're also looking at creating some consistency on-street parking, so through a bit of an audit we identified some areas where the time limits don't make sense. So for instance, one side of the road might be 60, one side of the road might be 30, very confusing for people when they are looking to park. And the third one is creating some consistency in off-street parking time limits. So we identified off King Street there's a little lane, and in that area of the CBD they all have sort of 60-minute time limits, but that currently doesn't have any time limit, and is currently might be being used for all-day parking by some people when it should be available for shoppers and gym users, etc. And also the car park out here in front of the town hall is 120 minutes, but that is inconsistent with all the other off-street car parks we have outside the main CBD area, so looking to remove the 120-minute time limit off that. Just to reiterate, this isn't about putting parking charges on those areas, it's just about using time limits as a way to try and ensure that we get through traffic, we get people being able to park when they want to go to things like the cafe, the park, or things like that, but also ensuring people have options available for parking. So happy to take any questions.
Questions? Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Matt. There is an introduction of extra monitored car parking though, and my interest is with regards to park warden staff, what effect that would have. Do we currently have the staff that could accommodate the extra monitoring, or would that mean we would need an extra resource?
So I guess Terry might be able to speak to this more, but we're also undertaking a project following on from that about how we might replace our parking infrastructure in terms of parking meters, and also how that monitoring might take place. So I know they're reviewing how parking might be monitored, so it might be that actually because of the monitoring system we use, it doesn't use additional resource. We're just being smarter with the way our resources are being used. But with a lot of these time limits, a lot of it's advisory, because you're not going to have a warden appearing in every part of Masterton over 120 minutes. So part of it, that's community good and expectation of how people should behave in parking areas.
And just a follow-up question. After consultation, and should this proposal go ahead, when would this be implemented? So
it would likely be late October. So the thing that would need to happen is obviously removing parking signs in certain areas and repurposing them where we can, and also sourcing parking signs as well to advise of the changes.
And would there be some correspondence in the immediate area?
Yes. So if the council chooses to adopt this consultation document, the plan is to do a drop to all the businesses in the area, so they are aware of it, but it would be, there would also be correspondence if those changes do take place. There is expectations that we make the public aware before any enforcement is undertaken, yeah, so it's not going to pop up and surprise them.
Thank you.
Councillor Barry.
Just looking at some of these maps here, I can see that there's going to be a little bit of concern from some of the businesses who, anecdotally, there's evidence that these parks get used for a considerable amount of time.
Yes.
Was there any consideration given to maybe, this is probably not the way to go, the ability to possibly purchase car parks for these businesses?
Not at this stage, but I guess when we come back with the feedback that we receive as part of the consultation, we could explore options as well. So as we say, this is a consultation, so we want to hear from those who will be affected, and then we could come back with proposals. Obviously, it's balancing, knowing, I think, the businesses you might be referring to, balancing how they use that space, but also how public might want to use that space, and particularly around certain areas that we sort of see as main attractions for Masterton, making sure that people can get parking close by.
Thank you.
Councillor Lennox.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks. So following on from Aria's question, so after consultation there could be a possibility of extending some of those parking space times to 2:40. Is that such a thing? 2:40?
Depending on feedback, we could come back with proposals. Obviously, we want to remain consistent with our bylaw approach, so we wouldn't want to pick out like 2 car parks in it to have a 240 zone when that is completely inconsistent with the area. Yep. But it might be that actually we might change the proposed 120 areas, maybe narrow them or extend them based on the feedback.
Yeah, the question comes about from like the likes of the screening room. You know, like often you spend longer than 120 minutes watching a movie, for example. So that was just...
Yeah, and also with all of these are obviously monitored between business hours, 9 till 5. So a lot of them, when people are going out for dinner or going to the movies in the evening and things like that, the limits wouldn't apply.
Yeah. And the other thing was just around the consultation document, just for ease of reading and hopefully getting lots of engagement. There's a lot of repetition, especially around page 89 to page 93. So we've got a summary on page 89, and then we repeat that whole thing again in a roundabout way on page 93. I just think it could be condensed a little more.
Yep, I can.
Ease of reading.
I can look at that straight after this.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Councillor Goodwin.
I just wonder if it should be stated a bit clearer in there that, well, if I'm not mistaken, we have a policy, or our policy objective is to achieve turnover and function of the areas we're talking about, and it's not viewed as a revenue generating. Could that be mentioned?
Yeah, I can.
I think that's the difference between us and something.
Yeah, I can make that a lot clearer, that this is about ensuring, that availability of parking for people to use, not about revenue gathering. As you'd note in the financial recommendations, no talk about potential additional revenue or anything like that. The expectation with these parking limits is people will modify their behaviour to meet the limits.
Matt, what question really it's got an obvious answer, I know, but I think it's probably the reaction that I've had so far from the public on this is that the very clear message that you're giving here is that these recommendations are not what we're going to do necessarily, that this is going out to consultation, the public are going to have a fair crack at it, and then they come back to us.
Yes, yeah.
That needs to be very clear, because people tend to read into these things and take it as if we're actually doing it now.
Yep.
But the message would be that all this goes out to consultation.
Just to be really clear, this is council's proposal that we are seeking feedback on. So this is what we are intending to do. And then when we receive the feedback, and if there's people saying, it's a strong feeling against this, then obviously you will take that into consideration when you have your deliberations.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. The ship's probably sailed, but was there any consultation with the community about parking meters? I can't recall.
We didn't do that on as part of this, because we are specifically, the resolution was to leave the parking meter stuff as they were in December, but to look at these hotspot areas. So I've just stuck to looking at that area.
Yeah, I understand the restrictions you were placed under, but so there was no consultation at all with our community about parking meters.
No, not as
We
part of
made that
this.
decision ourselves.
Yes.
With no consultation.
Well, I guess the decision made was to continue with what's already happening, yes.
Thank you.
Well, any further questions? No further questions. Somebody prepared to move the recommendations on page 81? Moved Councillor Bowyer, seconded Councillor Lena. Any further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Matt. We can go to page number 100, the water meter installation for properties on a shared water supply. Steve. You don't really look like Steve.
Tēnā koutou, Your Worship, councillors and ELT. Ko Steve Toko Ingoa, councillor. We were asked back in, I take the paper as read, we were asked at a meeting in April to come back to discuss and analyse and come up with a answer for including commercial meters on shared meters. And what we found is that we recommend that we do include the check meters for commercial rateable properties up to 32 millimetres diameter. The majority of the commercial meters are 32 millimetre and they average about $300. So there are the odd commercial meter that are not shared at this stage that are bigger and would cost us substantially a lot more money, hence why we recommend that it's 32 millimetres diameter and under. So out of the 487 approximately properties, we found that 200 of those were on a shared meter and 7 of those were commercial. So what I'm asking for is to supply a standard manifold meter, check meter, to all rateable properties on a connection up to 32 millimetre, sharing a water connection with another rateable property at the request of the customer. That means we do not do the installation costs. Any questions?
Right, questions. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. It's pretty complicated, I get it. The thing that concerns me is if a person says or refuses to install a check meter and yet you can't actually monitor their individual usage. So through the paper, because I did find it quite complex, am I correct that then a fee would be applied to that property? So my next question is, though, there are some negatives about that because there's potential to undercharge because you're unsure of what that fee should be. So my question is, how would you arise at that fee and to charge them?
Sorry.
So we haven't actually landed that yet. That is a piece of work that David will be doing, but you're absolutely right. A fixed fee will be in place.
Yep.
We now know legislation tells us that we can't bill on estimates.
Yeah. And my next question would be then, would that fee then would there be the potential to assess whether that was appropriate or not and was sufficient enough?
I think we would do that as a matter of course, as we do with all our fees and charges.
Yeah. Because it is, you've got people on user pays and you've got people on refusing to pay and then you've got people on who are paying a fee. And I would assume or hope that it's set at possibly higher than you probably expect rather than lower to incentivise people to say, oh, well, I may as well install a, get a check.
Yeah, I think you're right. We need to be pragmatic, especially in the early days when we're transitioning into this, which is still, a little bit away, but it's going to take us a couple of years before we can actually really have confidence in the data we're collecting and our pricing structure and so on.
Yeah, Okay. It's quite confusing, isn't it?
It is very complex. I have to say that this is a simplified version of all the work that
So that we can understand it.
We can understand.
Yeah, I just want to endorse what Councillor Johnson said about making that fee higher, because certainly we wouldn't want to be in a position, would we, David, where such a tiny number of properties is driving a whole policy. This is a very small number of properties. I assume from those numbers the majority are simply someone subdivided the back section and built a house on it. So it's not even blocks of flats. So I just wanted to endorse what Councillor Johnson said about making that fee higher than expected to incentivise people to move to chickpeas.
Just to respond to that, we can't do that legally because people can't be worse off.
But you can stretch.
You've still got to estimate, and you won't know until further down the
No,
track.
it's not an estimate. It's very clear that we can't estimate. We have to set a fee, and we have to work out what is a principled approach to setting that fee. People can't be worse off because they are not being charged volumetrically. But yes, we will try to incentivise people as much as we can.
But they would be presumably better. Well, I presume the comparison is what they're paying now in capital value rating. And anyway, I do have faith in council officers' creativity.
What would be a fair way would be looking at what the average consumption in the rate is and applying that.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. I found this pretty confusing too, to be honest. But one question with this, like the meter outside my house, which is a single property, there's no charge for me at all to have that installed, was there, apart from my rate?
That's correct, yeah.
So it's just unfortunate for these people who live in those properties where these are in place. They do have to pay for the thing that I didn't have to pay for as a ratepayer. So it's just bad. So if you bought a property or a subdivided section, even though you're getting the same services as I get, because you're in a subdivided section, you're having to pay something that most people don't have to pay.
No, it's not.
Is that right, or am I completely wrong?
Council's responsibility is to the boundary.
Yeah.
So if you live 5 houses down,
Yeah.
that's private property.
I told you I was confused. But am I right though, in so much as I don't have to pay for it because of where I live? But if the house next to me subdivided previously in the past, before they subdivided, they would have had that 1 metre outside the house.
Correct.
But everyone who builds on that property thereafter would have to pay to get the same service that I'm getting.
Unless you came to arrangement to share that 1 metre bill, and that's where they'd be encouraged to get their own metre. But they wouldn't have to, we would provide the metre cost, roughly $300.
Right,
but they'd have to pay the install, yes, yeah.
But
So
I
that-
didn't have to pay for the installation. Sorry for interrupting.
No, sorry.
But I didn't have to pay for the installation, but these people do have to pay for the installation.
Correct, yeah. Because there was original one connection for the one rateable property.
But the original, yep, that's fine, but the people who are moving into these new sections do have to pay for something that someone like me on a normal section doesn't have to pay for. Is that
Well, that is right, essentially, Councillor. The rationale is that we don't work on private assets, private properties, so we don't go inside the boundary.
Yep.
So the one on the street, totally, if there were 5 properties in there, all connected to one service,
Yep.
the community pays for that street asset,
Yep.
that totaliser. Any internally, we are recommending that we provide the meter free of charge, but the installation is at the owner's expense.
Okay, so just for clarification, I'm paying for something in that type of section that I didn't have to pay for in my type of section to get the same service. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Helena, then Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Steve. You'd be pleased to know I thought it was an easy read. Probably because I didn't understand it. And just a couple of questions. How many private dwellings are on a shared shared connection with a pipe greater than 32 mil?
There was, we did,
I've got this one.
yeah.
So we've moved on a little bit since this paper was written last week, so we now know that there's about 550 properties on a shared meter, and of those there's about 27 on a connection that is larger than 32 mil. It's about 40 mil. So
27?
yeah,
And
yeah.
how many of those are privately owned?
They'll all be privately
They're all
owned.
private. And
Yeah.
the 500, how many of those would be privately owned?
They'll all be privately
All be
owned.
put privately.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Tutor.
Thank you for your report. Like Councillor Nelson said, if I had to pay to have the installation of the check meter, which would have been given to me by the council, that would, did you say that there would be, the council would pay $350 or something?
We would provide the meter.
Oh, but it will be...
Which is worth about $312.50 or something.
And I'd have to pay for the installation?
Unless you chose to have your own single water connection, in which case we would install the meter and you just have to pay for the pipe work on your side like any other property.
Can I just, sorry team, just point of clarification. We are not suggesting that it is mandatory to have a check meter inside the boundary. So if you elect to have a meter and therefore you are not going to be charged under a slightly different regime, you pay to have one installed. If you don't, and there is a meter on the council side of the boundary, there is no additional cost to it. So you are not paying extra to get the same service because it is elected. You can decide for yourself.
Now, as Karen suggested, I may, if I'm one of the unlucky ones to be sharing a meter, be at an advantage not to get a check meter installed. Could be.
Well, you go, there's also much.
You may be, but you also don't know how much you're actually using compared to your neighbours, and if you wanted to have more of a direct control over what you're using so that you can then use less and make sure you only have a small amount to pay, then you'll elect to have a meter installed, yes.
Councillor Goodwin. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bowyer, then Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, my question just on what came up then around the 27 connections over 32 mil. Are these residential or commercial businesses?
Some of them are commercial, some of them are residential. Sometimes they might be quite a large subdivision that has had a large pipe installed to connect them.
Okay, yeah, just that clarification, because a single entry of 32 or 40 mils quite a lot to get into a house.
Councillor Goodwin.
I just wonder how this works if people down the back section haven't got a check meter, they're charged a fixed fee. If, looking not very far ahead, they could be getting a separate water bill. If they fail to pay that water bill, whoever's in charge of the water, how do they restrict their flow in accordance with the law so that they have enough water to live, but it's restricted?
Well,
I see a problem looming because their whole basis of what is being talked about in the future, payment for water, separate payment for water.
Well, that is a complex issue, and when those kind of issues come up, we consider them on their merits. So, restricting the flow on a single pipeline is obviously relatively simple for us. If it was on a shared connection, we do have the right to go inside the boundary, and most properties, even though they might not have an individual meter, they will have a individual Toby or point of isolation. And there are mechanisms that...
So you do have, is that in the bylaws? Do you have the right to go on?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Any further questions? Councillor Helena.
Just to clarify, Mayor, so every individual home on a shared connection, they'll have their individual Toby?
Most of them do, Councillor. Not all, but it's a typical arrangement that they will have their own point of isolation so that they can shut the water off just to their home.
Yeah, okay. And I know you haven't worked out the mechanics of how the standard fee will be made up, but if there's 4 homes sharing one connection, there will be a meter, at least 1 metre on the street.
Yes.
So you get an idea of how much water is used. Will the standard charge take into account that volume, or will it just be, how will it be determined?
I can't comment on that, but there will be some robust road rationale behind that. Of course,
Yeah, I don't think we can look at isolated individual cases and say for those 4 properties we're going to apply this. It would have to be a standard rate. If we don't have a measured usage amount because there is no check meter, but we have a separate rateable property, it's receiving water services, there'll be a fixed charge that takes into account the fixed charge that everyone else is paying plus something to take account of average usage. Yeah. Yeah. So and we're also looking at transitioning from what we currently charge into a regime of water meter charging, so that the amount that we charge or collect based on the usage versus the fixed charge, we're transitioning over. We were proposing that over 3 years. So honing that charging system is a 3-year process.
But even after 3 years, correct me if I'm wrong, the cost to the household will still be part fixed charge and part usage, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's long-term.
The fixed charge will set a minimum usage. If you're under that, you won't get a bill for your water usage. So you can use up to that volume.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Lennox.
Do we know out of these properties, and we may not, how many are rental properties? And then my next question would be the expectation on who pays for that, whether that then falls back onto the rental owner or the landlord. Have we considered that?
Yes, so we don't have information about the number of rentals, but we will be billing the property owner or whoever it is that receives the rates on that property.
Councillor Tutor, then Councillor Nelson.
If you have a Toby on your property, is that what the meters are collecting?
Yes.
Well, if you're on a shared, in a shared situation, and you have Toby on your property, the only reason why we can't go on there and install them is because they're private. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
It's not that we can't. It's council policy that we don't work on private assets because there can be flow-on impacts.
There's risks, that's correct, Ms. Sainer. There could be quite a bit of risk to council regarding, the service could be under a beautiful driveway, or, we're going to have to dig that up. Any issues that arise, council will be culpable for, etc., etc. So we'll always be responsible and private. Once we start getting into that space, it's a slippery slope.
Okay. But the purpose of having water meters was to change people's behaviour, was to conserve
end user pays.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
And Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. What was the total cost of installation? It might have been in the report.
On an average residential?
Yeah.
Well, as you know, the meter's roughly $300. The install's approx 800.
800.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be, so there's 500 of them need to be installed. So that's $400,000. And if you, what's the total cost of, Maz, of all the water meters in the Wairarapa? I'm sorry, Marison, I'm thinking about it. Do you know the approximate cost?
I think the project cost to date will be around $1 million, or?
Yeah, yes.
Was that all?
No, sorry, that would only be for like this financial year, but it has been going for a few years, so we're talking about 30 million.
5 years of installation, the purchase of the bulk purchase of the meters, I think we had 5 million is the total project cost.
The total project cost. So in the beginning, when we decided to do this, was it an oversight for this type of situation? I'm not trying a gotcha, I'm just trying to find out why this wasn't looked into before.
The paper does outline that there was a decision made by Council in 2019 around an assumption that people on a shared meter, we could split the charges equally. We've since had legal advice that we couldn't do that, which has had to change our approach. We had assumed an installation on I think the word's easy to install, was the wording in that resolution to say that if properties share a meter and it is easy to install, we would do that. But there are some very, very complicated situations where meters are needing to be installed on shared properties. $800 is the average. It could be thousands of dollars if we're needing to dig up driveways, or we don't know where the pipes run and we don't know the internal plumbing.
So some of these properties could be up to thousands of dollars. If everyone took the 300, that's $150,000 on average, and then the total cost to the council would be, aside from that, would be $250,000. You know, is there appetite, Karen, could we put a recommendation in that these are covered fully? Like, it just seems to be inconsistent that some households are paying for this because they're on a subdivided section because of a council policy and decision, and others aren't.
So there's two parts to that. We're changing our policy. We're changing to volumetric charging. So shared services were not an issue before, of course, because everybody was rated the same. And as we move to volumetric charging, we realise now this is an issue that we have to deal with, and this is the best way that we are proposing to do that. The installation costs are an issue, but there's also the liability. I think what Maz was talking about, not going onto private property, because then that does present a huge amount of risk to us, and that's not fair in our view to expose the rest of the ratepayers to that risk. So there is the alternative of staying with a fixed charge. It's not that people will be disadvantaged by not having a meter. They'll still be able to charge, will still be able to charge. We don't get the added benefits, of course, of people then being able to control that themselves if they decide not to do that. So that's why we've balanced all of these interests and proposed that this is the best policy that we are proposing. The next paper is the bylaw. We've included this policy position within the bylaw for water supply, and the bylaw goes across the other two councils as well. So coming to your second question about whether we can change it, it would be quite problematic for us to change that policy position now to include actually paying for installation. We would need to go away and need to do more work on what that would cost, what the risks would look like to that. We would then not be able to adopt the bylaw that covers that policy position, which means bylaw wouldn't be able to go out for consultation. I'm looking at my policy advisor, which would then impact being able to do that by the election time. So there's a knock-on effect of this. So one suggestion would be that we go ahead with the current policy position. We can consider if that's the direction of the council around what your proposal is as to what to pay for installation, and we could come back to figures. I'll pass over to Maz on that bit, but it's something that we could perhaps do in the future and come back to you on, and then if we need to make any amendments we can do.
So it's not as simple as I think.
It's really not very simple. We're right up against the time of being able to go out for consultation. We've pushed the consultation on the bylaw so that we can try and fix this problem. We really would like to get it sorted before the election, because the policy working group, of course, made up of the current councillors, have been working all the way through the consolidated bylaw, and we don't want to hold up the rest of it for these provisions. Naz, did you want to add anything to that?
So I just wanted to check that I understood what you were asking, and is that to consider the cost of council carrying the cost of installing those meters where there are shared connections.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And when my maths was about $400,000, that Karen's saying that the risks, and it was in your paper, wasn't it, of going onto a property magnify that significantly.
I think that, there's a nice lever for the community that we are not making it mandatory that they have the meter. So for those who can't afford it, they can just run, status quo, see what the fixed chart, how that rolls out over the next year or two to work out whether it's financially viable for them to invest in installing the meter. So it's not like we're asking people to go and spend money now. It is.
So if there was, say, 2 check meters, so a shared connection with 2 properties, and one had a check meter, wouldn't that be enough? You should figure out how much water's going in, and you'd subtract it from the other one.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Unless there's a leak. So we wouldn't be able to take into account leaks through that. There would be a leak on their side on one of the...
One could be House of 5.
So that's effectively estimated again, and we can't estimate.
Learning a lot.
This is a very, very complex topic. It's taken us a lot to get our heads around.
Yeah, just further to what Ms was saying, I reckon we're complicating the already complicated, because someone wants to choose to have a check meter, they can. Someone doesn't, they pay a fee, which is going to be fair and worked out based on average consumption. So it's a small number of properties. People have a choice, and they've got a period of time where they can work out pros and cons of either. In the meantime, they just pay a fixed fee.
Properties may also choose to get their own single. Sorry, properties may also choose to get their own single water connection.
Yeah, so we're not stopping anyone doing anything.
We're not forcing.
We're not making anyone do anything, and we've given them 2 options.
And we are proposing the remissions policy as well for people who are in financial hardship.
It's complicated enough as it is.
Councillor Nelson?
Just to overcomplicate it. So the ramifications of the choice don't change when we have water meter charges, don't they? So Marama can water her garden all day and fill up her swimming pool, and if her neighbour doesn't, then the neighbour is suffering from Marama's foul play, So it just doesn't, now it seems okay because of the way we charge for water, but after water charges come in, it would be different. So the ramifications change. Am I right?
To a certain extent you are right. It won't give us the full picture in terms of supply and demand, the behaviour kind of change that we'd be looking for around consumption. But we won't really know how successful that is until we actually start the volumetric charging. The team have got a really good process in place now that they've kicked off, so they're identifying where there's really high use, approaching those users to try to get them to reduce consumption, identifying if they didn't and they were getting a bill through use, what that might be. So in the broader scheme, we wouldn't 100% be getting what we were looking for in terms of supply and demand, but it may be a very small component that we're not achieving, that it's irrelevant, but we won't actually know, Councillor, until we are fully implemented with the metering system.
Councillor Lena?
Yeah, thank you. I just wonder how many of those 500 properties actually have an issue, i.e. their Toby is buried under the driveway. Do we know that?
No, because these are within the boundary.
But given what we know,
Probably,
sorts of property,
typically
10%.
10, 20%. So out of 500, maybe 50.
So we could actually reduce the number and have more people on check meters, assuming we change the bylaw and require check meters at the tobies on that shared connection. Is that wrong?
If you wanted to, but I'm not sure what you'd be achieving by doing that, councillor. Other than, well, it is, Karen pointed out, you know, the downstream impact of trying to make that kind of change now is significant, not just for Masterton, but for the whole of Wairarapa, because the next paper is the consolidated bylaw.
I guess it depends how much we truly value volumetric charging. And I guess my concern is around a lot of these properties, I'm imagining, I don't know for a fact, but a lot of these properties on a shared connection, probably one or two kind of small properties, probably not high value properties. And we know that the lower value properties are going to suffer the most under the volumetric charging change, because we're moving away from CV's chunk of money, which used to subsidise low value properties' water costs. That's all going out the door. And when we looked at the modelling that we've been given, we see that the biggest shift in cost is for low value properties in terms of their water charges, and higher value properties we see they can actually use a lot more water based on the modelling at the same price than previously. And so my concern is for, are we going to disadvantage a pensioner in a two-bedroom flat or two-bedroom home or on a shared connection with a fixed charge when this person, you know, probably uses very little water? And so can we be more consistent with our approach and identify the areas where there are concerns, i.e. tobies under driveways, and create more scale around that principle around volumetric charging being spread across more of the population?
Thank you, Councillor. I kind of feel that that is a revisit of the work and discussions that have already occurred around the financial modelling and where we've landed, your direction to us, which was to phase it over a period of time. So we're definitely hearing what you're saying, but just seeking some direction and a decision in regard to where we are now in terms of the commercial meters and shared services.
Councillor Bowyer.
Mine's just a quick technical question. What's the telemetry distance for reading this? How close do we have to be?
When Rob's doing his reading.
I'm not entirely sure. It's a drive-by, so a vehicle drives around and the readings are...
So,
I don't know.
So if we've got this check valve down a 40-metre private driveway, are we going to drive down that private driveway? Or that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, well, more than likely, but I don't...
Yeah, because I've got a question for the building team later on.
There are still some manual reads that can
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, I think it's worth remembering that there's the $300 remission for, I think we've set aside, is it 50,000 for that, which is, you know, quite a lot of properties, 150. And at the end of the day, where the water enters that property, I assume their feed might come under their concrete drive, etc., etc. But at some point it goes into the house, and that's where you fix it. It's not like you have to dig up the concrete drive. That's where you fix the check meter. And $300, if you're broke, would go possibly quite a long way to installing that, I would guess.
That's in the perfect situation there, Councillor. Yes, there might be some easy installs like that, but what generally happens then, someone builds a shed or an apartment or something over that connection with just a little hatch, it bursts, next thing the council's liable to come in there, move all that that's where it goes a bit sour. I know that's the extreme side, but we have encountered that quite often, where people, there'll be some good wins, but the ones that won't be will be costly and high risk.
Thank you. Councillor Hillian.
Just on that, Steve, burst water pipe, that's not council's responsibility, right?
Correct, that's right. So we're responsible from the Toby, from the boundary. So in the meter, from the total.
But if we put a check meter next to the house, you're saying we now have responsibility for a burst pipe beyond the boundary?
Well, so we supply the check meter.
Yeah.
We don't install it. They'll get their own plumber. They will do any fittings or what we call a manifold box that the meter fits into with a Toby. But if we do that, anything, people are people. Any pipe work, anything like that, ground slumps, whatever, there's paving stones there, they'll make it our responsibility to fix. And that's what happens. Yeah.
Just as a result of us being on site and
Correct,
having
yeah.
tinkered with the RSC.
Well, I'm going to get somebody, could somebody move the recommendations on page 101? Move Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Goodwin. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Holmes?
I think volumetric measuring's great. I think it's going to be wonderful. Having been involved with a water scheme for a long time, it comes back to education, and also until we get every household on a single meter, there's going to be tears for some people. You just can't avoid it. And people play the system all the time. We had on the one area scheme, we had one person who was a lifestyler, put a tapper in and got free water for 15 years, and no one knew until it blew out. So I'm saying that until we get a single meter on every household, there'll be tears. There'll be people that won't be happy with it.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Any further discussion? Councillor Lennox?
I just want to say to our community that majority of them will have their meters installed out the Toby on the street. So get a little screwdriver out, pop the lid and start looking and reading your meter to see what water you are using and for any sort of strange patterns, because at the end of the day, until you get the bill, no one's going to bother. But I would start bothering now and just start looking at what water usage you are using. That's my message to the people.
Further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now we're going to break in now into the agenda. I'm going to welcome Catherine and Karen to our meeting from the Wairarapa Recovery Service. Simon and Ben from the Recovery Service as well are not here. But one of the things that I want to do is the fact that the Recovery Service is now closing, and I think that on behalf of Council I want to just voice our appreciation to the Recovery Service for what they've done over a long period of time. The Recovery Service was opened on July 17, 2023, so it's a fair way ago, and it followed Cyclone Gabrielle, and the idea was to coordinate recovery activities across the 3 district councils in the region, but more particularly Masterton, because it was the east coast of our district that bore the brunt of the damage, and when we think back, we were very close to a national emergency. The main thrust of the Recovery Office was to assist in supporting individuals and communities impacted by the cyclone, and also by Cyclone Hale before it. There was still stuff happening there. And with North Island Weather Event, which is a NIWA funding from central government, we were able to resource for 2 years. Establishing recovery officers with dedicated resources following an emergency event is actually a reasonably recent approach in emergency management, and the Wairarapa Recovery Office was the first formalised standalone recovery office ever to be established after a natural disaster in Wairarapa. So it was completely new for us. I had the privilege of being chair of the governance board, which was set up to do, among other things, disperse available funds to victims of Cyclone Gabrielle And I personally was fortunate enough to have a ringside seat on how this recovery office operated and how valuable it was in the whole recovery effort. When you look back, they were not only required to develop new systems, processes and approaches to distributing funding from central government, but they also had the often trying task of engaging with impacted individuals and communities. And when you think back, and I think we had a meeting here where we had some of the individuals who were impacted by this cyclone, we saw the tears, we saw the passion. These people in the recovery office had to deal with those people on a regular basis, and really, really difficult. And I think it speaks volumes for the work of the recovery office that they went about their work in such a way that they, one, deserved praise from basically all parts of the recovery process. And when we look back and we had a debrief on this whole situation, one of the things that came through, probably surprisingly really, because it was, as I say, there was a lot of passion, a lot of hurt involved for people, that the recovery office, I never heard personally any criticism of the recovery office. That's how good they were in dealing with people. They coordinated brilliantly with us, with government departments, rural sector agencies, community support organisations, emergency services. I mean, there was so much they had to deal with, and they really did an amazing job. And because of that, I think it's only proper that we as a council today say a huge thank you, Catherine and Karen, if you take that on board, to all members of the Wairarapa Recovery Office for the service you not only provided us, but provided a wider community. You did us proud, and most importantly, you gave us confidence, and I think this is really important, that when another emergency weather event strikes, which it will, here in the Wairarapa, we're going to be ready and able to take on all the challenges it will bring up. So, Catherine and Karen, thank you so much on behalf of Council, to Simon and Ben as well. You guys just did a magnificent job, and we really want to thank you for it. Would you like to say a few words?
Look, thank you so much for that acknowledgement. It's hugely appreciated and greatly valued, so thank you so much for doing that. We would like to acknowledge back to you your support, your involvement, your interest throughout the last 2 years, supporting the recovery program and all the work that we've done. When we've had to come to you for guidance and decisions, you've been able to provide that in a really supportive way, and we've valued that enormously. We also want to acknowledge the foresight and advocacy you did to actually secure the funding to be able to establish the recovery office. Amongst all the various different hui and debrief that we had at the end of this process to prepare our report, someone mentioned that success is really is often determined by the amount of resource and support that goes into it. And it was the work that you did right at the start in getting the governance committee together, being so involved and actively advocating for the people of the region who'd been impacted, that allowed us to get the funding to be able to do the work we've done. So we really want to acknowledge that. Thanks to those of you as well who come to our various community events at times. It's been really wonderful to have your direct involvement in some of those gifting ceremonies we've had for things like emergency resources. And we know that the communities in those areas really valued seeing you out there actively supporting their efforts to prepare their communities for the future as well. So it's been a real privilege for Karen and myself and for Simon and Ben to be working on this. So thank you again from us. Thank you. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're now on page 112. The adoption of the revised draft Part 9, Water Supply Bylaw and Wairarapa Consolidated Bylaw Statement of Proposal for Consultation. That's quite a mouthful. Karen.
Sophie.
Oh, Sophie. Sorry, Sophie.
So, thank you, Your Worship. I'll just give you a brief overview of the report. My name is Sophie. I'm Policy Advisor here at Masterton District Council. On the 14th of May, you considered and adopted the Wairarapa Consolidated Bylaw Parts 1 to 11 for consultation. However, staff were still working through the legal advice on Part 9 water supply as it relates to water meter charging. You agreed to delay consultation on Parts 1 to 10 to address this advice and open consultation on Part 11 trade waste, as this required a 2-month consultation period. A separate statement of proposal and submission form was published for this part. This report provides you with an updated Part 9 water supply bylaw for your consideration following legal advice. This report also provides you with a revised statement of proposal content for the Wairarapa Consolidated Bylaw, Parts 1 to 11. Subject to your approval, the bylaw will go out for consultation this afternoon, hopefully, touch wood, and will be open until the 25th of July. South Wairarapa District Council has already considered Part 9 and adopted the bylaw for consultation, and Carterton District Council is considering it this afternoon. As you would have heard from my colleagues, staff have proposed changes to Section 14 of Part 9 to take into consideration legal advice and consistency with the Local Government Rating Act 2002. And to clarify our responsibilities regarding water meter installation, supply and maintenance. As outlined by my colleagues earlier, the Council has been working to install meters, mainly fertiliser meters, on the service pipe outside the property boundary across the district. A key purpose of installing meters is to enable the customer to understand and control their water consumption and the fees they may pay for this service. Installing check meters within the property boundary presents additional costs and risks to Council. The changes to Part 9 intend to clarify when Council will install a meter and when they may consider installing one upon the request from the customer. This is to align with our approach and existing practices. The other key change to the bylaw relates to legal advice we received in May on volumetric charging. The advice was that if a meter was unable to be read, e.g. broken or having a leak, we cannot estimate the charge. The revised sections indicate that Council may charge a fixed charge for when these instances occur. This fee may be pro rata, meaning that it may only apply for a fixed part of the charging period. So at the moment we're reading our meters quite regularly, so we'll be able to identify when there's a broken meter quite swiftly. We recommend that Council consider and agree the updates to the bylaw and agree to consult on the Wairarapa Consolidated Bylaw from 25 June to 25 July.
Any questions for Sophie? No questions. Somebody prepared to move the recommendations on page 113? Moved Councillor Goodwin, seconded Councillor Bowyer. Any discussion?
Just a question.
Yeah, Councillor. Yes, Councillor.
If a meter is damaged or unable to be read, who has responsibility for fixing it?
So we would have, now my colleagues might correct me, but we would have responsibility for the meter. So if the meter is broken just by, the batteries run out, obviously we would look after that asset. However, if it has been damaged intentionally, then we have, there are processes outlined in the bylaw where we can seek remedies for that. I think in the bylaw it outlines that, people won't damage our property. So yeah, that's kind of on us, yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put the recommendations on page 113. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Go to page 191, Ngāti Tukuru Reserve, Masterton. Oh, we'll go with this one. It's not Maz, it's Oz.
Kia ora koutou. The paper before you, the purpose of this report is to seek approval to access funding set aside in the long-term plan for the implementation of the Ngāti Tukuru Reserve Master Plan. The recommendation that we're seeking is that Council approves the release of capital expenditure to the value of $119,000 to enable progressing Phase 1 of the Ngāti Tukuru Reserve Master Plan development. Within the paper, I guess page 193 outlines the design of Phase 1, so happy to take questions on aspects of that. And also, I'd just also like to highlight how this piece of work sort of fits across a number of our policies and strategies and plans. So it is probably one of the feel-good pieces of our work. Yeah, it's something that gives us a concrete proof of us delivering on things that we've implemented.
Councillor Johnson, question.
Yeah, mine's just a basic question. I didn't quite understand why we need to approve the release of the money when we've already approved the project and the budget.
So during the LTP deliberations on the 5th of June, there was an extra amendment made, which was that for this project, or this presentation that you received through the LTP, that we had to come back to seek access to that reserve contribution funding. And I think there was Golden Shares, there was the Kids Zone Playground, there was a few other projects that sort of had this little condition added to it.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Bowyer.
Just one simple question. We're still looking at a total allocation of 300,000. The 19,000 just hasn't been a bit of mission creep.
It's taken a year to get to this stage. So it's a quantity surveyed estimate with contingency. So we've got council staff. We will be running through the procurement phase of everything. So we'll keep it tight. But yeah, that was the quantity surveyed result.
Jack?
Can I?
Kia ora. We just to, I guess, just to acknowledge the work of the officers in the reading through the report. Thank you for that. But to acknowledge the engagement with iwi and mana whenua to develop the design. I see Bob Miskell is involved in that, but more of the commitment to ensure there's a robust design process and that the cultural elements have been taken into consideration. So just to acknowledge the work of the team in doing that.
Sure, thank you.
Ian, as a person who probably goes through this or the side of the 5 days a week on walks with the dog, and it's so close to the 4th Street Trail, I noticed there's nothing, I didn't see anything in the report, but would this be an off-leash area for dogs? Because it appears to me like it would be a very good little park for dogs.
I guess we'll have to have a discussion with the descendants around what their vision is in regards to that respect. The current trail network that runs through between 3rd and 4th Street, plus also coming from Tautara Street through, that connects at that area, is currently bound by whatever existing dog laws are in place. So at this stage it will be status quo. I don't think it's not designated off or off leash.
It's just that the paths that run down beside this reserve are very much dog walking parks, and it's going to be very hard to keep the dogs on the path. They're not going to do the reserve, I can tell you that. I'm not quite sure that it's going to happen.
We might need.
But the other thing, Ian, will it, when you're talking about enhancing it as you go forward, are you looking to have some sort of equipment there, or some sort of playground, or is it going to be more than just a few little pretty things?
Yeah, so our involvement and our investment will be on things that can be capitalised as council assets, but the hapu and the descendants are all actively looking to fundraise and introduce elements as well. So there's a flax weaving whare, so the triangular beds that you see on the plan there, that's to create the correct harakeke planter boxes, which are being propagated by the hapu to be brought in, because the current flaxes that are there aren't appropriate for the weaving. So there's things like significant construction buildings and that which are part of the future development of the space, and that's hapu know that they have to seek a number of other funding avenues to be able to bring this whole master plan to fruition. And so there'll be things like mara hupara play, which is natural play elements within the space. There's like a little white kidney stone area, so that's repurposing the soil that's going to be used to develop some of the path network. That will create like natural mounds of which will be grass, just to create interest and just active areas. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I think this area's got huge potential. I know it's really small, but the 4th Street Trail, the whole trails there are used by, I don't know how many people you look at a day, but it's probably only second to Henley Lake and or third to Henley Lake, Queen Elizabeth Park, the number of people who use that trail. And this is so close to it that, and it's always looked to me just like a bare hunk of land, and to hear that this is happening, I think it's actually quite amazing, and it'll be great for the town. So thank you. Somebody, I'm prepared to move the recommendation that we approve the release of the capital expenditure. Seconder, Councillor Lennox. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. We'll have a 10-minute break now, people. Come back at 10 to. Okay, we resume our meeting and we go to page 196, the Climate Action Fund Criteria Update. Kelsey.
Kylie.
Oh, Kylie. All right, Kelsey here.
Not a great day with me.
Kelsey.
Getting all the woman mixed up, Kylie, sorry.
Good one, Grant.
All right, so I'm here to present the proposed Climate Action Fund criteria for adoption. That should be quite straightforward. So a couple of highlighted things to point out. There's been a couple of tweaks since you saw it last to reflect some of the feedback that we've received. So in the criteria in point 1, the purpose of the fund, we've incorporated the word enable. So it now reads, the purpose of the Climate Action Fund is to partner with the community to enable projects that respond to climate change and build resilience in the Masterton district. Secondly, point 2b in the criteria, there is a request from one member of CAG to clarify the biodiversity outcome. So instead of enhanced biodiversity, it now says enhanced biodiversity with climate change outcomes. Thirdly, point 5 of the criteria, we've clarified schools being able to apply as part of a partnership application. And then finally, point 23 of the criteria, we had feedback to incorporate a statement on ethics. So in the terms and conditions section, we have included wider ethical implications will be considered when assessing applications. So that's it from me. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Kelsey. Questions for Kelsey? Kylie.
So close.
Pretty close. Kylie. Okay, Councillor Goulburn.
Just the only concern I have with the measurable outcomes. I don't know, got a horrible suspicion you could spend $1,000 on a project and $49,000 trying to build a case for the measurement of its success. It's very, I don't know, you tell me if I'm wrong, it's a very complex thing to demonstrate a measurable outcome. I mean, council never does it, well, really. And you're expecting people to do it with a $3,000 to $50,000 project. I'm just a bit nervous that that is too restrictive for this small fund. Can you talk to us about what sort of measurements you're talking about?
Yep, so first of all, the fund will only cover up to 50% of the costs. So the project cost will need to be $6,000 to $100,000. And the measurable outcomes have been put in to ensure that the applications have a climate basis to them. Secondly, the measurable outcomes, they shouldn't be too hard to measure. If you're doing an emission reduction project, it depends on what the project is. So if you're doing an emission reduction project, there are definitely ways to calculate how many emissions you'll reduce. We've put in the application form to get in contact with us if anyone has any questions. For sequestration, we've put in links to like a sequestration calculator online. In terms of water conservation, you should know how many litres of water you're saving if that's your plan. The other part of it is if we don't have a measurable way to understand what the applications are achieving, makes it really, really hard for people to make a recommendation or a decision on what should be funded. So, I mean, it's a lot of money that we're giving away. I mean, giving away $50,000 without an idea of how much impact the applications or the project will make is quite a tough ask, I think.
Councillor Johnson and Councillor Lennox.
Thanks, Kerry. No worries. There's just a couple of typos on page 202, which I'll alert to, because they just need to be correct. But I just want confirmation that because of the involvement now of the Awards and Grants Committee, that the recommendations will come to the Awards and Grants Committee as per the people that pass go, or to be funded, and the committee won't be going through the whole criteria and selection process.
No, so CAG will make a recommendation and then we'll write a paper to the Awards and Grants Committee saying these are the recommendations.
Just talks about the committee's involvement, but not that they'll be basically signing off on your recommendation. So I just wanted clarification on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Lennox.
Yes, thanks, Kylie. Just in regards to Brent's question, could you confirm that you presented this to the CAG group and that they, as the subject matter experts, could confirm that those measures were well
Yes.
and good?
Yes, they did. So we did take the whole paper past CAG and they agreed with it. Thank you.
Yeah, good question, Councillor Lennox, considering you were at that meeting. I was actually going to say the same thing. Both Stella and I were at the meeting, and the Climate Action Group were totally in favour, unanimously in favour of this way it's working. Is there any further questions? Councillor Helena?
Yeah, thanks, Kylie. A couple of questions around the measures. Will the decisions around whether applications are accepted or not be guided by the ability to measure the impacts of those
Yes,
projects?
so what I'm proposing is we put together an assessment matrix for the CAG team and say, look, this is how your projects rank, and that'll give them a bit of clarification as to what project's going to make the highest impact, so what potentially could receive more funding.
And just to follow up on one of Councillor Goodwin's comments, is it possible for council, our climate action program and our waste minimisation program to be measured under similar metrics?
For waste minimisation, I'm not familiar with what it currently is, but in terms of emissions, do you mean, or the
Emissions
amount of
or
waste?
criteria you've got for, I'm just wondering, I totally applaud the use of these criteria to determine who we grant funding to, but I'm just wondering if we hold ourselves accountable to the same sorts of measures, or are they not appropriate for what we do in our climate funding or our waste management processes?
I think Karen's...
So Kylie can't answer that because she's not part of that work, but it's a very good point that you make, Councillor, and I can take that back through to Joe around how that work programme is actually measured and how we then feed from that work programme into the next work programme. So yeah, it's a really good point. Thank you.
And just lastly, Kylie, I think exciting that schools can be included, but any thoughts around what a shared initiative might look like in the school?
So it could be a planting project, so maybe Friends of Henley Lake wanted to do a planting project with a local school and they wanted to get the kids involved, or it could be, I think Solway Reserve do something similar with a school. Yeah, it depends what's out there. Yeah.
What, Councillor Goodman, was it?
Yeah. I just fear the corporate emissions report, for instance. I mean, it just scares me, the thought of officers quantifying the fact that we save, 1.5 reams of paper on this report or something by not printing it. We do go down to that detail in our corporate footprint, and I would feel a bit nervous if you're quantifying it too much.
Thank you.
Quite sure that was all about. Anyway, somebody prepared to move the recommendations on page 197? Moved Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Tutor. Any further discussion? Councillor Holmes?
Yes, Kylie, I'll refer to you as Kylie, not Elsie. Kylie, congratulations. I think, I've always been very suspicious of climate change and everything, and I make no bones about that. But I just want to just tell you something, that on Sunday, a chap I know went up to Woodville to pick up his pine trees. He wanted to pick up several thousand. There were 15 million pine trees sitting there waiting to be picked up from Carbon New Zealand. Now this is a country that's going to go completely out of production. So I just thought some information that you might like to know.
Thank you.
15 million pine trees are going to be planted.
Any further discussion? Councillor Lennox.
Yeah, I too. I just want to say well done on this. I think it's great because what this grant fund is doing this time around is just opening for bigger, there's more opening for larger scope projects, and I think that's really, really important. And obviously, you know, was part of a book launched a couple of weeks ago around, you know, people-powered projects across the region in this regard, you know, whether it be, you know, biodiversity, climate change, all sorts of areas. But I think the fact that we're offering up this fund and that, you know, it's giving a better scope for larger projects, I think we may see, hopefully, some really good ideas come forward. I just hope, I know that the period's short and it opens very soon next week, so I just hope that the comms team can get the information out to the people so people are aware of the grant and that it's going to be available. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to just say too that this is a real classic example of the value of having very knowledgeable people on climate change on our climate change advisory group. It's an extremely strong group. Kylie runs the meetings extremely well, and this group and our disability group and our rural advisory group, I think we're very fortunate here at Council that we have three groups which have really skilled and knowledgeable people on, and we're benefiting hugely from that. So, okay, the recommendations have been moved and seconded. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. We then go to page 210, the adoption of the corrected dog policy to address limitations on missing dogs. Sophie.
Tēnā koutou anō. Thank you, Your Worship. On the 14th of May, Council considered and agreed to an amended dog policy, kaupapa here kuri ki whakaoriori. This report seeks your approval of including a revision to the policy to remedy incorrect criteria relating to the limitation on menacing dogs, which was omitted by administrative error. Post-adoption of the dog policy, officers identified that a key condition in the original policy was not carried over regarding menacing dogs. No permits are granted if 2 or more dogs are classified as menacing. So it's just on the limitations of numbers of dogs. This was an administrative error and not intentional. The impact of this condition not being carried over is that the policy lacks clarity on the restrictions placed on the number of menacing dogs in a person's ownership. The existing drafting allows us to put in place criteria on permits, including this type of provision. However, officers consider that the original wording should be reinstated for clarity. We recommend that the wording included previously in the policy be reinstated under the limitation on the number of dogs allowed section. That is, a permit will not be issued to any dog owner with 2 or more menacing dogs, regardless of whether the dog is menacing by deed or by breed. This change does not trigger any further community consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? This looks to me like a pretty much a no-brainer. Because I'll move the recommendation. Somebody seconds. Says Councillor Johnson. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sophie. Okay, page 227. Adoption of the 2025-26 annual plan. And that's going to be Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Worship. We've reached the point where adopting the annual plan for the 25-26 year is now at the council table. It's been discussed a number of times throughout the course of the last 6 months. It is year 2 of the long-term plan that was adopted 12 months ago. So the changes from what was proposed in year 2 of the long-term plan are minimal, and the report highlights some of those changes, but the bottom line is very little different as far as the total expenditure and the rates required and the setting of the rates. The significant changes are described in the report. in particular the roading increase, where government and Kotahi have changed the criteria and reduced funding in some areas, and then given other funding to assist in drainage work. So the council's share of that funding, we only get their funding if we match the funding with the council's subsidy share. So those adjustments have been made in the budget. The other area where I wanted to highlight was the cyclone impact. The two areas are the repairs in the roading space, where we've over the last 2 years spent 17 million. Next year there's still another $1 million worth of work to stabilise roads and recover from the cyclone. Our share of that spend, because that's funded by Waka Kotahi, our share has been loan funded, and we've also funded the share of the fossil buyouts on the properties that were flood affected, and loan funded our share of those buyouts, which were 50-50. The total additional interest expense on the loan funding for those two things is 0.7% rates increase in the rural area. So a lot of the roading cost is sheeted home to rural. So in terms of the overall rates increase, 0.7% relates to extra costs from cyclone recovery. So overall, we're looking at a rates increase of 7.5% after growth, and the growth in the rating base is 1.35% since this time last year. The average urban rates increase at 5.5%, the average rural at 13.6%, driven by those roading increases, and the LTP in year 2 signalled increases in the roading budget. And that was because the 3 years of the roading program in the LTP were staggered. The first year lower than the second year and the third year. So it was signalled in the LTP, and we're following through with it. So the rates increase for rural is not new, it was in the LTP. There's a total of $55 million of capital expenditure in the program, which is a significant amount. $73 million of operating expenditure. 70% net debt to operating revenue. So in the local water done well discussions, we look at 175% as the maximum the council can borrow up to as a funding limit. We are at the end of the financial year, June 2026, we'll be at 70% if we utilise all the debt funding that's allowed for in the annual plan. So we're well within debt funding ratios, but we are utilising around $20 million of debt in this plan on a number of projects. I think that's as much as I was going to present.
Questions for David?
Yeah, I was wondering if we can have a discussion about a couple of projects in the end plan. Firstly being Wider House extension, which I'm giving the impression is not going to proceed as planned. So I'm suggesting it would be too optimistic to take it out, but to simply pause it until the next LTP project, when we have some more certainty around what our water costs are doing, and what our water staff will be doing, and what the costs on our community, especially the lower value urban properties, projects, White House and Town Hall, which collectively cost, 5% of rates when they're fully kicked in. And it goes on until the loans are paid off for 25 or 30 years. So I'm just wondering can we have a discussion about pausing those two projects for a couple of years? Not stop.
If the question is, can you have a discussion, that's probably not mine to answer, but the capital provision that's in the budget at the moment for the Waiata House extension is 5.5 million. It gives the council the option to progress that project or progress some variation of that project. Leaving it in the budget allows options to progress. Reducing the number without reference to anything else isn't part of the process, because you're changing the LTP and we'd have to go back to consult. The current borrowing impact and interest cost impact on that 5.5 million would hit in the following financial year. So there's no, if you took out that project and said we're not going to do it, there's no impact on the rates increase in the next 12 months, because we were going to borrow for it anyway. And the borrowing we budget for in the year after. So I think leaving it as is, acknowledging that it still has options to be brought back to council before progressing the spend is the best path for the annual plan. But Kim or Karen may want to discuss that further.
Well, could I ask that, that raises the point, and I don't want to speak out of turn here because there's been some emails about what's going on, and it probably hasn't been made public, but I would have thought we're very quickly getting into the space where what we consulted on for Waiata House extension is not at all what we're looking at. And being sure if I tried to change the project by that much, I'd be told, no, go there to reconsult. It's a different project. So that's why I acknowledge that I can't take it out without a consultation, but I could seek a pausing of it until the LTP, next LTP. So maybe you could...
So Councillor, we're going to bring a paper back with potentially a more affordable option that'll come back on the 8th of August to the council as a business case. And so the work that we're doing at the moment is looking at, can we still achieve the objectives of what was highlighted in the LTP about what we require, and bring that back as an option which might be more affordable to our community than cracking on now and continuing to spend more ratepayer money on design and options which I believe maybe don't demonstrate good value. So essentially the pause that I have put in place at the moment is to be able to go away, come back with some other options that I believe would be more affordable, bring it back to this council for a decision, and that's what I intend to do on the 8th of August around that time.
Okay, well, thank you. Can I commend you for doing that and giving us the choice in a very short time, only a couple of months, 6 weeks, to make a decision. What I would like to ask is that you do the same with the town hall, because there seems to be quite a lot of people saying that they very much doubt that we will be building a new one, for whatever reasons, budget being one of them. And the fact that geology is probably exactly the same as White House extension being another one. But I'm just very conscious that we are still, as the report from Karen at the end of this agenda mentions, when discussing the Infometrics report, we are still coming out of the worst recession for 30 years. And I think it's time to pause a project like the Town Hall demolition. Why go and spend 3.6 or 3.8 million, who knows what it is, when there's no, other than you'll make up a plan which will cost some money of what you'd like to put on the site. That's, to me, in the midst in a recession, and people have been under severe pressure for some years with some quite high rates rises, that we should be pausing that project. We do not have to make a decision on that building for another 6 years. Why not?
We're not going to relitigate, I think, the demolition of the town hall. What's pretty clear is that we are going to come back to this council about any potential future town hall and whether that can be achieved within the allocated budget. But at the moment, the direction from the council is that we demolish the town hall and comply with the consent, which is has currently been approved. So
the
we will be going out to
5
procure,
years,
though.
isn't it?
We will be going out to procure a demolition firm in the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks to ensure that we comply with all the requirements within that. So,
and that consent is valid for 5 years, is it not?
I think it is 5 years, but there's a number of conditions on the consent.
Yes,
So,
but it's valid for 5 years. All I'm asking for, I'm asking you to drop it, change direction in the debate, is just pause it for a couple of years until we're out of this recession and we have a bit more certainty around that big bogey being water services. I didn't even say roading, but there's some very big uncertain costs coming up which we don't have a lot of clarity on, and it would be appropriate to pause that decision. The consent's got 5 years. You don't have to do anything legislative, legally for 6 years. What's the rush?
Yeah, I'm following the council direction. If you want to change that, then it would need to be a council decision, really, from that. But there'll be a process that we need to follow here.
There'll be a process. I jump up. You know there's a process coming. So the inclusion of the projects within the annual plan and the long-term plan is not just about budget, as you know, it's about giving direction to the organisation on our work programme. So this is part of our work programme, both the Waiata House extension. We still need to do work on that in order to be able to come back to council. And so I think the Waiata House, the Chief Executive has explained that, and that would be the process moving forward, that it's included within this annual plan, and then if there are other options or other alternatives, we will need to consider what those are at that August meeting and the way forward from there, and then any implications from that for consultation, given that we have, as you quite rightly said, Councillor, included that as a project. So we don't know how different that would be, if it's going to be different at all. We may explore different options and find that they're not valid. So we're right at the beginning of that process, so keeping that within the annual plan enables us to divert our staff resources to continue to work on that.
Does that mean you'll be proceeding straight away, even now, for all I know, with developing plans for what wondrous things we could do on the Glen side?
So that was the Waiata House extension. With the town hall, we have the direction that the town hall, so the council, and it was very, very clear at the resource consent application hearing. The commissioner took great pains to consider what council's resolution was there, and it was very, very much, it was a two-part. It was to proceed with demolition and to look to concept plans for a replacement. It's very much those two parts. And so until we get different direction on those two parts, that's what we as officers will proceed with, much in the same way as with the Waiata extension. You will need to consider what the implications are for not continuing. You don't have that information in front of you at the moment, the advice on cost implications, risk implications, community consultation implications. So my advice is that you wouldn't be able to make that decision today.
Pausing something, surely you're overstating that. Pausing a project would CE pause one, because what rightly thought was a better path. If we pause this project, it's not rocket science. What there is to know.
I think the definition of pause is quite different for me.
This pause is different to mine.
So I think it probably is from what you're suggesting. So when we're saying pausing, we're still continuing working and putting staff resources around different alternatives. We're not stopping work. I think what you're suggesting, Councillor, is that we don't take the work on the town hall any further forward. We don't proceed with going out for tenders for demolition. We don't do anything for a year or two. That's not pausing, that's stopping the work. It's currently in the long-term plan and in the annual plan that we will continue that work. So if you want to pause and stop that from happening, we will need to give you advice on what the implications of that are.
But I haven't said necessarily stop or work. I would love to, it can't be very expensive to go to a QS and say, look, can we, for 21.4 million, can we build a new town hall that uses, these old architectural features, and it's got 15 green stars, that has all these facilities in it? Can we do it? Because I would have thought he would just look at you and say, go away.
So if that's council's direction, that needs to be the direction from council. You need to understand, you need to give us direction on what information you would like us to report on, to come back, and then for you to make a decision. You can't make that decision today, but you can give us direction, and we will continue with those projects included in the annual plan so that we can agree the annual plan, set the rates, because if we can't agree the annual plan, we can't set the rates.
Yep,
We're well
that's
aware
fair
of
enough.
that.
Yep.
And then we can report back further on if there is a council direction for us to do so.
Can I provide you some sort of support there, please, Karen? So the current work is proceeding as per the resource consent and the advice from the Commissioner. We are not looking at options on what to do with the 20-odd million. That all of that work has been done over the last, sort of 3 to 4 years. So we are actually deploying the project plan.
I would like some, I have a suspicion that you can't build the project you consulted on with all its bits and pieces for 21.3 million.
And you may be right, but that's not the current scope of work. And remembering that number was to be supported by external funding that was going to be sought by an external group. So you gave us the mandate to spend up to 25 million only.
That was to reduce the sum, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. It was $25 million. That was the figure that was put in the budget. We had approval.
Yes, to be reduced by external funding.
No, that's incorrect. If it was going to be more than that additional funding had to come from a trust or some kind of entity that would be set up to seek that funding, which Bob Francis was involved in. So at this point in time, we are pushing on with the project so that we can go to the market to get prices for demolition. We're not looking at how much it's going to cost to build a replacement town hall. We're delivering on the consent.
So, but the question which I find people saying to me is, why do you demolish it if you don't know what you're going to do with regarding building a new one? And if it's, especially if it's not practical.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. We are, it's just been pointed out, we're actually discussing the annual plan here, not so much the town hall. Okay, any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Bay.
So mine's actually a specific question. On the supplementary report, page 55, under the Trust House Recreation Centre.
Supplementary.
Yeah, the appendix, attachment 1.
For the
annual plan?
Fees and charges?
No, the annual plan.
Then, yep, okay. 51.
55 it is.
Yep.
No, it's just about the figure of depreciation. So through all our annual plan, most of our depreciation's moved around that 10%. But for the Trust House Rec Centre, depreciation has gone up over 50%. And I know there'll be something around work or so on, and I'm just wanting an explanation to it, because I see that reverse depreciation has come up considerably as well. Just wanting an explanation as to how that works financially.
Yep. The requirement to value our assets every 3 years was actioned last year. So June 2024, there was a revaluation of the building assets, and the recreation centre is one of those. And it's done at a component level, and there was a significant increase in the value of those assets, and a review of the remaining life of the assets. So the depreciation comes from the value less divided by the remaining life. So it resulted in a significantly increased depreciation expense number on that facility. In order to, I suppose, smooth the impact of the additional depreciation funding, there's a level of depreciation we don't fund on that facility on the basis that when it is replaced, it will receive some external grant funding as it did when it was originally built. So we've upped the unfunded portion to smooth the increase. There's still an increase required in rates for that facility next year, but we've reduced the impact of the additional depreciation.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Nelson, I think it was.
Thank you. With the destruction of the town hall, is this the last off-ramp? So once this is approved, the town hall gets destroyed?
We're proceeding with the demolition of the town hall.
So demolition, destroyed, same thing. Yep.
We're proceeding with the demolition of the town hall.
Yep. So if this is approved, the town hall will be destroyed.
That's nothing to do with this.
Oh, it is. It's in the long-term plan. It's an annual plan. So we're approving everything in the annual plan if we support the annual plan today.
You're approving everything in the annual plan?
Yep. Part of that. So what I'm saying is a way to stop the destruction of the town hall, not to approve this annual plan. If it's not approved, we can't go ahead.
For the tender, aren't we? You're going to bring tender documents to us.
It's included within the long-term plan. So
In the annual plan.
the annual plan is the snapshot, and it's just basically confirming that this is the year 2 of the long-term plan, yes. So that was Council's direction to, as I say, and that's what we've got consent to do. If there's direction from the Council that you want us to report back on a project plan so that you can understand, what that project is, or you can ask those questions of Maz later on when she's presenting her project reports, then that's what we can do. But effectively, we're just proceeding with council direction in this annual plan.
Okay. So supporting this is supporting everything in the annual plan.
That's right, but by not supporting it doesn't mean to say that you then don't support the long-term plan, if you understand what I mean. It's a double negative, but to not support the long-term plan, you need to do a lot more than just not support it.
In this document that I read, everything that if it's supported today, it's supporting everything in there. Go ahead.
It's just reiterating what was included in the long-term plan. If you don't support the annual plan, we can't set the rates.
Yep, I understand that.
Yep.
So the rates would stay the same as they are at the moment?
The rates will stay the same. We will have 3 months of charging what we currently have, and then we've got 3 months to adopt the annual plan. Otherwise, we can't charge rates at all after those 3 months.
So just to clarify, supporting this is supporting everything in the annual plan. So when the councillor votes today...
Reiterating what's in the long-term plan that's already been agreed.
Okay, so people supporting this plan will be supporting essentially the destruction of the town hall.
That's included in the long-term plan, yes.
Which you voted on the long-term plan as well. Councillor Johnson?
Just a question with the CBD upgrade, the money that we've put in the budget for the water main and the road and the path work. What's the time frame for that, please?
So we're actually having a project kick-off meeting in the next week or two, and once we confirm the exact scope of the work, we will then lay out the program, which will tell us when we'll start.
There's a number of reasons, obviously. Obviously, you know, we can't please all of the people all of the time, but it will impact on business in the CBD.
Absolutely.
Appreciating that work has been recognised and needs to happen, but we just need to be mindful of not only our timing, but the appropriate timing for retail.
And we will be working up an engagement and comms plan.
Yeah. Because it's never going to be ideal.
No, that's right. So we will be working with the community.
Yeah, so my thoughts
businesses
are, obviously it's not going to happen over Christmas time. Obviously it's not going to happen, but then we also need to be mindful of weather so that we don't have timing delays and things like that. But if we could just, hear back from you when...
I'll report that through, and the team will report that through in our infrastructure and assets activity reports, but we are very mindful of that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Hines.
To David, I'm disturbed like most people are about the rural rates, and over the last years I can recall urban rates being higher than the rural rate too, so it works out evenly. Have you any idea what the rural rate could be next year, or the next 2 years? In a rough, it won't be anywhere near 13, will it? It'll be closer to 5 or 6. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep, thank you. The other question is, I'm hot on water storage. I wondered what are the ramifications of financing through the water done well? Is there any possibility that way?
At the moment, we've got provision for the council's water treatment plant extension of the raw water ponds. Any additional water storage for other purposes, we haven't factored in as part of local water done well, and whether that irrigation scheme may fall into the water CCO or not. It may be a separate entity completely that runs a water supply, a water scheme for irrigation. At the moment, the council's budgets are factored around making sure the urban water supply resilience is looked after by having more raw water available to treat and put through the plant.
Just my suggestion is, rather than going a smaller area, going a bigger area and doing it over a period of three stages. We'll get a paper back at some stage about that, won't we? Because I think it's quite important.
Yeah, the first phase will actually be some engineering options where we will look at the needs, what the problem is that we are trying to solve. Initially, as David says, for Masterton in terms of drinking water, Kim has given me an instruction to look at what's happening broader to see if there is an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, if you like. So first, we'll do that first, Councillor, and then we'll come back and tell you how much money we think that we'll be.
I'm missing the photo shoot this afternoon at Cartpool.
Councillor Nelson.
Can you explain what the public space activation plan is if the town hall's to be destroyed? What is that? And
So that will be the open area that we need. The consent says that we need to have an activation plan in place, so that will be how we maximise the use of that space for the community while we await or do the work for design and start all the pre-construction work for the new build. So that area has to be able to be used by the community, it's got to be interactive, and there are a few other requirements. So we're working on what that might look like now.
Just add to that, there was concern from submitters at the hearing around it being left as a car park and an ugly space. So there was one part that the Commissioner was very clear that he wanted to understand what was coming in the meantime. So having both the concept plans for the replacement and also a usable space, so that it was better than what was currently there effectively.
Okay, so what could happen is, what would the budget be for that? What would be, where would the budget, so surely it would come from the town hall project because it's as a result of the town hall project. So we would have the construction of the town hall, and then the activation plan would be developed, and then what was developed would have to be built and created, and then that would be destroyed to potentially build another building on that site. Am I right? That would be
yes, but not in that sequence. And
a different sequence.
well, we need to do the concept plan for the activation area now. That's got to be approved as per the consent conditions. That's got to be approved by the planning department. Then demolition occurs. As soon as that's finished, then we construct that area, so it's a community space. The cost of that we won't know until we actually do the concept design, but we will be driven by being efficient with that space, having assets that can be redeployed to other spaces, so, you know, mobile gear, so there wouldn't be any decommissioning or specific fixed assets installed on that site.
Okay, so just to clarify, the building gets destroyed, the concept plan might be developed before that.
Well, it will be,
and
because
then,
it's a
and then the
requirement.
concept plan is implemented and built and created, and then that's destroyed, so we can build a town hall. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Yeah.
Thank you for the report. This is more a technical question, and I guess prompted by, you know, the overall need to increase rates. So ensuring that that officers have undertaken a robust process. And my question is just around the rate of inflation that has been applied, rate of inflation that's been applied to the modelling. And just to check and verify what other benchmarks have been used to confirm whether the barrel rate of inflation is the correct rate to use. Kia ora.
Thank you, Chair. We receive a local government cost index information that is commissioned by Taiturara, the local government officers group. They commission it from Burl, and Burl provide that in September or October each year for the future years ahead. So they project, and we apply it for either our long-term plan or our annual plan. So the numbers that came through in September last year showed that the inflation for the 12-month period that we're in until June 25 for local government costs would be 3.4%. So we've applied that to all of our external costs unless we have better information. So contract costs for solid waste, for parks and gardens, for city care, the water mains, sewer mains. Generally they're at 3.4% expectation of an increase, and those costs when we reach the anniversary date we'll apply the actual rate, but for the budgeting purposes we've applied 3.4. For those things where we have better information, and insurance is one of those, we've got a more solid projection, and it's actually an 8% decrease in insurance costs projected for next year on material damage insurance. So where we have good information, we'll apply an accurate budget projection. Where we have we know that it's going to be a cost index applied or an inflation factor, we use the Burl local government cost index rates. And we also, for interest, we assess what our current borrowing costs are for interest and apply that forward for the next 12 months. And the number that's in the plan at the moment is 4.8% as our average interest cost of borrowing.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Lynn.
Is that me? Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. I just want to know what the answer to Councillor Nelson's question was around plan, demolish, fill, demolish. It wasn't clear. It didn't seem to be a clear answer. He assumed it.
No, because there'll be nothing to demolish. So demolition of the town hall, make good
That's what I meant, the town hall.
make good that space, activate it, work on plans, blah, blah, for the new building, get prepare for that, then it's not demolition, but probably decommission that space.
Deactivate what was activated.
Yeah, that's right, Councillor. Assuming that that is the exact location where any new build will occur.
Okay. I won't comment on that at the moment in terms of a process. David, I'm just wondering, you've indicated that the impact of loan funding the town hall and Waiata House will kick in 2026-27. What's the actual rates impact for 25-26 for those two items? Do you know?
Nothing.
Zero.
Zero.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just be council work.
Yeah, the debt servicing cost doesn't impact rates. Extra depreciation isn't factored until we actually have a new asset.
And just my final question, probably to you, Karen. The community document on the annual plan that is included in here, when is that planning, when do you plan to put that out to the community?
So we've got a month under the legislation to publish it, so as soon as it's ready and all the typos are sorted,
For the last half hour I've been trying to pull it up, and my computer's been playing up, and just from memory, my memory of reading that around those two buildings, Town Hall and Waiata House, the wording is they're progressing as per the long-term plan. But I'm also hearing, and I also understand that there's some variations to those, potential variations to those two things. You know, the CE's exploring other options around Waiata House, cheaper options, totally support that, but it might not end up being exactly like it was indicated in the long-term plan. Similarly, the town hall, until we get more information, we don't really know whether that's going to be a go or not. And I'm just wondering, can we make that wording or make those messages explicit in that document to our community, as opposed to these are progressing as per the long-term plan? Because from what I'm hearing now, that there is doubt that that could possibly happen. So could we include that there is some doubt around those things in that document to the community? Or is that being transparent? Or
Yeah, my advice is that just raises confusion, because we don't know what the alternative is. We don't know. It may well be that we explore other opportunities and they are more expensive, and that actually coming back to what we've planned is what we do. So until, we're in really, really early stages of, assessing whether the thing that we have in the long-term plan is still the right thing to do. So I would suggest that it's too early to make any amendments to that and to indicate that, there is some doubt around that. That's not good practice in your planning to say, we think it's this, but we don't really know what it is at the moment. It's just a matter of timing. So my recommendation would be that we continued with the wording in there. I mean, I've said it before, and Councillor Goodwin knows, we don't, there's no requirement to do what you have put in your long-term plan. Under the legislation, we're not forced to do it. Of course, we couldn't be under those sorts of constraints. But we do need to have a good indication in our planning documents of where we are and what our understanding is. And until we know any different, I wouldn't change what we've got.
I just think it's far better practice to be transparent with our community. If there are members of our community that are desperate for us to have a town hall. I just don't think they're a majority, but there is a group. And then if that doesn't happen, because there is doubt being expressed now that it might not happen, it's possible that it won't happen. So why would we not inform the community of that?
Because I just don't think we're at that stage to know any different to what we have got in there. So there's transparency, there's also not being confusing to people. And so, that's not very transparent if we don't know where we are and what we're doing.
There's doubt around this project going ahead because of A, B and C. How is that confusing?
Because we don't know if there's doubt. We haven't done enough work yet.
You've said today there's doubt.
Sorry?
You've said today already there's doubt.
There's not sufficient doubt to be able to say in a planning document what needs to replace what is in there. I don't see it as appropriate to amend what's in the actual plan and the funding that goes within the plan until we know what replaces it.
I'm just talking about our messaging to the community in that document. And my memory of that messaging is these things are going ahead as per the long-term plan. And today, there's considerable doubt whether those two things will go ahead as exactly planned initially. And so why would we not be communicating that with the community?
As I say, until we understand what replaces it, what is in the plan is not, it's an indication to us to continue working on what we've got. There's always issues that come up throughout the year as to we're going to build, this particular thing, and it actually transpires we can't build that particular thing. But if we remove what's in there, if we try to make amendments to it, my feeling is that it's actually just going to be more confusing to people until we're further down the track. Then we can put signals out to people as to where we are with our planning, and then if we need to do any consultation and change the long-term plan, we can do that through the annual plan next year.
Well, I would much prefer greater transparency, but I guess council will decide that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lena. Councillor Goodwin, I think, then Johnson.
Yeah, look, I would also support changing those words. It's well within our comms people's skills to put down something of what has been discussed today. You say it's confusing. I give the public credit for being able to read through it and understand that. Right? I don't think it is confusing. On a totally different subject, David, at some stage we are going to have to talk about depreciation on the rec centre, because when that was built, from memory, it was 50% outside funding. And just looking, I don't know, looking around the community right now, I don't think that some of the people, the one body that put up the bulk of that 50%, they wouldn't even be able to do that now. It's there. So I think that is yet another, understatement of liability going forward that I don't expect it to be answered today, but I would like it to be on the agenda sometime, because the truth is if that facility was replaced, I wouldn't have a clue what the two sums are, but I think it would be extremely unlikely that you would find 50% outside funder. And you would probably be aware of how, say, a major funder's way of funding has changed. And so, yeah, it's a lot of money, and we all know that, it's a bad council when going forward, when one day we say, oh, woe is us, look, we need to replace this, but I'm afraid we haven't appreciated it enough. So it just needs a reappraisal, I reckon, that logic. It's been there for 20 years, and times have changed, and that logic needs to change.
Councillor, can I just suggest that maybe we park that and we add that to a tag list and we bring that through.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, just a couple of things. One is, my understanding is we're still waiting on that final report for the Rec Centre Stadium Area 2, which will contribute to that conversation, the analysis.
Yes.
But further to what Tom and Brent were saying, the town hall information, Tom, has been updated in there, Tom, which says about the activation space and the hearing results and everything in the annual plan. So I don't think that information needs updating, but I have to admit I'm supportive of a change to the copy in the document about Waiata House, because it does say progress on the Waiata House extension is advancing, Architecture Plus in partnership with blah 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 have been appointed, and I read it and thought myself, this information's out of date. And whilst nobody wants to cause confusion, I think it would be appropriate to say that progress on, work on Waiata House is progressing whilst we are gathering information, we are cognizant of making a decision on the best option for our community. I just read this and thought,
Cost-effective alternatives.
it's not current. And I also respect what you're saying, Karen, but if I'm reading it and thinking this information's out of date, I think there's a point here. So I would just like...
So are you proposing an amendment would just have some qualifying words, indicating...
Not that we're pausing or stopping or doing
So some qualification around we're still assessing moving forward,
and we've got information. Yep. We're just making sure it's appropriate as we move to the next step. Yeah.
So we're still in question. So if that's something that you want to do, then
I would like to ask Council if they could reconsider the wording of the information in the document that relates to Waiata House. Given the current situation.
So you can do that in the next part.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. I'll put the recommendations on page 227. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bay. Any discussion? No further discussion. I'll move the motion. Everybody in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
Carried.
Yep.
I'm against. No division on that. I'm not happy with...
Well, yes, we voted against the long-term plan. The same three, is it? Tom?
We didn't have a great opportunity to speak to the motion, Mr Mayor, and I'm wondering if we just backtrack so some of us...
sorry, I said any discussion and nobody...
Yeah, you did.
You gave us 3
Nobody
seconds.
said anything.
Did you time it, Tim?
No, maybe 2 seconds actually.
Let's do it back.
Okay, no doubt you two do. Okay, Tom, yeah.
Yeah, for the same reasons I couldn't support the long-term plan. I think the huge expenditures we're burdening our community with around the town hall and Waiata House. For me, at this point in time, it's a misuse of ratepayers' funding, especially when huge numbers of our community are struggling at the moment. Neither of those projects came with a business case, and I've heard calls from members of this council for business cases for much smaller projects since that time. So no business case, no comparison of can we spend this money in other areas that will give us a bigger bang for our buck. No comparison with other alternatives, assuming we were going to spend that money So I'm kind of sad that we've made that decision without good quality thinking, good quality evidence in terms of the impact they're going to have on our community, and they're going to burden our community for the next 20, 30 years. There is also significant, our community is facing significant uncertainty with water infrastructure and water costs, and we know, just from the modelling that we've been given, a big part of the burden of that water model, or the new water costs, is going to fall on the low value homes to medium value homes, and as a proxy we know they'll tend to be low to medium value income earners, and so there is significant change ahead of us, and I think I'd just like to support Councillor Goodwin's suggestion that we just put these things on hold for now. I don't think it's fair to our community, particularly those on low incomes or medium incomes. Yes, and I think, you know, we made these decisions without looking, and I want to reiterate this, we made these decisions without looking, yes, we're going to spend some money, and it's, you know, these two projects probably up to $3 million a year for the next 20 to 30 years. Is that money better off going into roading? Is that money better off going into somewhere else? We haven't even had that discussion. So for me, I can't support the annual plan for those reasons, just like I couldn't support the long-term plan.
Councillor Lena, any further discussion? Councillor Nelson.
In the message from the Mayor in the report, it says, we remain acutely aware of the financial pressures our community is facing our community, and we also see it later on in the Infometrics report, that we still fail to prioritise. We choose these projects, these nice-to-haves, and we just go on with them when they're totally unnecessary. We heard what Kane said this morning about roading. If we don't address roading properly, it deteriorates faster. We just fail to prioritise. We go for things we don't need, and we spend ratepayers' money, in my view, with we just treat it with disdain. Incredibly disappointing.
Thank you, Councillor Lena. Any further discussion? Councillor Nelson. Any further discussion? Sorry. If I could just say one or two words, I'm very strong on this, and I've had a lot of comments over the last few weeks with people, and one particularly last night, with big groups. I don't believe that the ratepayers of this town are against the town hall, what we're doing there. I believe strongly, in fact, the majority are in favour of what we're doing. I get that impression wherever I go. At the Thursday meetings I have with the mayoral thing, people often come in and talk about the town hall, and I have not had one person come in, I've had one person come in opposing what we're doing. So I think I personally, and as mayor, I'm willing to put my reputation on it, that I believe that we do have support. It's been going a long time. It's been going 9 or 10 years, and people are saying, for God's sake, get on with it. And so I'm strongly believe that, and I mean, the public will make that decision, I guess, at the ballot box for those of us who support it, but I believe that. The Waiata House one, I think we're in a very fortunate position, thanks to our CE, that another plan has come forward which could save ratepayers money. And this, one thing that those of us who have favoured the town hall and the Waiata House and the library extension have always said is that we will favour it, we will support it if it stays within budget. And we're still saying that about the town hall. We're still saying that it has to be within that 25 million. And now we've got a situation where we could be saving money on Waiata House. So I think we're doing damn well. So I have great pleasure in moving this as I have. It's been seconded. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Aye. Division.
Aye. Against. The division being Councillor Goodwin, Councillor Lena and Councillor Nelson. Thank you so much. Okay, we move on to 227, the adoption of the 2025-26 annual plan.
Okay.
No, no, sorry, this is, we've just done that. God, David, at least I got your name right. Page 272, the rates resolution 2025-26. David, you'll be talking about that too.
Yeah, I don't think I need to say much about it. It sets the rates in the dollar and the fixed charges that are applied according to the revenue and financing policy and the funding impact statement. The detail is in the annual plan. The back pages of the annual plan duplicated in the rates resolution, but it is the formal rates resolution that we then put into our system and produces the rates notices for properties that go out in a couple of weeks' time, and setting those rates for the next 12 months.
Okay, any questions for David on the rates resolution? Yes.
Yep, just a question about process. So supporting this is supporting the process, not supporting the rates that's been suggested in the annual, the previous vote. So it's just supporting a process that we have to follow.
The rate setting process.
Thank you, David.
Excuse me, is that entirely true? Because this process is setting a monetary value per capital value or land value or whatever, is setting a value which is derived from the annual plan.
Well,
it is
annual plan
connected.
Annual plan boils down to expenditure and revenue, and we're looking for a balanced budget, which is a requirement of the Local Government Act.
Yeah.
So part of that revenue that we need to balance the budget comes from rates. We've identified we need $50.6 million of rates revenue, and we have a revenue and financing policy that gives us the way it's allocated across our community to different properties, whether they be urban or rural, commercial or residential. So that we apply the policy, we collect $50.6 million. Having the $50.6 million set by adopting the annual plan, we now set the rates to collect that $50.6 million.
So if you don't support this motion, you're saying you don't support charging rates. It's just a binary question, yes or no. It's not, I don't support the things in there. It means that you don't want to go ahead and set the rates and collect the rates to pay for the services.
Okay, any further questions? I'm sorry, Councillor Gordon.
Is any other opinions on that? Sorry, I'm sorry to doubt you. Karen, David, can I ask if you agree with that? Because, yeah, it just doesn't sound quite right with me.
The only options are adopt and set the rates, don't adopt and don't set the rates. There's no change the rates, because the rates, as David said, accords with what we put in the programme. They are the only two options.
Thank you. Any further questions? If there's no further questions, somebody prepared to move the recommendation on page 272. Moved Councillor Tutor, seconded Councillor Bowyer. Any further discussion? No further discussion, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. We now move to...
Sorry, register my vote against that, please.
Do you vote against it?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Goodwin votes against us setting the rates.
At that amount.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, we're not voting about setting the rates at that amount. We're voting about a process to set rates.
So you're voting against it too, Tom?
No, there needs to be a process.
So you're explaining what Councillor Goodwin...
Yeah, I'm just clarifying in my own mind that I'm not supporting the rates increase in the annual plan. I'm just supporting a process to set rates.
Yes, because the discussions around what's in the annual plan and the long-term plan happened previously. So you're just following on as a council as to, now that was agreed as a council, whether you agreed with it or not individually, you're now setting the rates as a council to reflect what's in the plan so that you can charge rates.
Thank you. That's been passed anyway. Okay, we move now to reports for information. Page 281, the Community Activity Report. Corin. And we'll now 1:05, I am noticing the time, and it's 2 o'clock for the next meeting, we've got lunch in between, so just mentioning.
I won't take that as a hint, Your Worship, to be quick. Afternoon, everyone. So I'll take the report as read and just make a couple of quick notes. You'll note in the library section we are coming up to starting to reduce programming in the library space, and that's just in preparation for the move to the temporary library space as part of the library project. So as part of getting ready to do that move, we reduce the programming, which frees up staff time to do part of the preparation, because there is a lot of stuff that will need to happen for that move into that temporary space, which will happen October, November timing. In the ComDev space, just really want to just take a moment to acknowledge, so we had the Matariki event, and as you're probably aware, as part of that, on the first day, there was an unfortunate bereavement. The team dealt with that really well, but in particular the reason I want to just mention that is that it really was a combined effort, and that was council staff and iwi working together in that space to deal with what was quite a challenging environment. And the next day we were able to, continue to come together and do a karakia in that space, really to complete part of a difficult process and make sure that the second day could happen. That was a really important thing, and we were really appreciative of the support of iwi in that space, so kia ora, thank you. Animal services, busy time. You'll see quite a few dog attacks, and there, just note there was a seizure. That's always a tough space for staff. They're working in those situations alongside police, and they can be quite dynamic situations, so not something that we go into lightly, and something that we always try and avoid, but also something that the team does need to do as part of their role. And we've got the Wagging Trails events coming up as well, so it's a great opportunity for the community and dog owners in the community to come together in some organised events and get out and enjoy some of our great open spaces. And the first one is on the 6th, and that's at Henley Lake, so it'd be great to see as many of the community there, and councillors and council staff as well. And just finally too, it's not on the report, but I just wanted to mention we are going to very shortly commence a Section 17A in our parking space, so that's looking at the provision of the enforcement of parking. So we will run that Section 17A process as per the legislation. The results of that come back to you, and that's ultimately a decision that you look at, and that Section 17A, as with all of them, looks at the best and most efficient way of delivering that service. Is it external? Is it internal? Is it a combination of both? But we'll bring that back to you, and I just wanted to draw that to your attention so that wasn't a surprise when that comes back to you at a later date. And I'll take questions.
Thank you. We'll do questions and discussion together. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Corin. Just a question. With the move of the library to its relocation in Chapel Street, will there be a period of time that the actual library services are unavailable and it's closed for business?
So yeah, possibly 2 weeks, so we're trying to keep it to an absolute minimum, and that's part of why we're reducing the program, to really reduce that to its minimum space. So it will probably be a couple of weeks, but we will work as part of the project on keeping that as small as possible, and we will also make sure there's plenty of notice to the community as well, so they've got an opportunity to get stuff out in advance and prepare for that gap.
Thank you.
Councillor Bayer.
Corin, thank you for your report. Just pleasing to see that you were able to return to donated telescopes back. Do you think there's scope within the overall council business to maybe return some of the stuff that has been donated over the years?
I'm not aware of much else in our space that we could do, but we are always conscious, like when we come to the point, if there are things that have been donated, if we are disposing of those, we absolutely try and put those back into the community rather than just like destroying, etc. It's not always easy because, of course, some things have been with us for a long time, and it can be hard to find people associated with that donation.
Thank you.
Councillor Cheshire.
Thank you, Corin. I've got a number of questions. On page 286, you've said that it was a hui was hosted by the Masterton District Council on EV elections. by the community activator. Was that concerning Masterton or the whole of the Wairarapa?
It'd be the whole of the Wairarapa. Yeah, and so that will be Deb from our community activators will have been involved in that.
Right, thank you. On page 89, you've got there the Matariki Awards. Who decides on those?
I'm going to let Kelsey talk to that. So it's the Matariki grants, Kelsey.
So the community development team meet as a panel and we revise those grants so it's submitted to other community activators. So we received 11 applications and 9 were successful this year.
Thank you. Also on page 304, the Goima, you've got mobility parking request. What was that about?
What's that page, sorry, Kelsey?
304.
I think that might be in the next report.
Oh, that next one, sorry.
Yep.
And I just wanted to comment on the big shout out that I attended. I was really impressed with the amount of people there. There are still lots of volunteers who organisations wouldn't be included, and that's okay, whatever. But I was really impressed with the number of people and how much they save us, how much work they save us in dollar terms, I suppose, as well. But the takeaway for me was that this Solway community group had produced an app to go with their Solway Reserve, and these are mostly retired people, and I think it's really great that they produced an app that you could click into. So, yeah.
And that's a good acknowledgement, Councillor. I mean, the Solway group have really activated over the last probably 12 to 18 months. When I started in the role, they were quite a small group, and they were really working out how they were going to work. And they are really they're turning up in force to our meetings when we bring the community groups together. So yeah, it's great to see the work they're doing.
Councillor Ernst.
Thank you. Thank you, Corin, for your report. As always, just in regards to the community activation group, development group, you're down, and the staffing around that, you're down a team member?
So we're currently, so one of the team members left, and we haven't replaced that role yet. We're just taking some time to look at that and decide what the role looks like before we go out and make decisions about recruiting and what that recruitment looks like.
Well done for achieving what you do achieve. And just some feedback around the Big Shout Day. Yes, it was great. I managed to pop in for a small amount of time. Obviously, it was my real job working day, but some of the feedback I did get from people that couldn't attend, given the fact that they do volunteer, is A, they work, and obviously not of that retired age where they have the ability to be more fluid, and would Council consider holding that day over a weekend day versus during the week at 10 a.m? Just a thought.
We'll look at that. Thank you, Councillor.
Just to add to that, I think one of the comments, the comment always comes through that we don't pick up everybody, but even if you've got weekends, Councillor Lennox, there are people working, the volunteers are working all the time, so you're going to miss them even on the weekends. I think if, no matter what day you pick, you're going to miss people. I mean, that's just one of the unfortunate things. But we had over 30 organisations, 150 people. I mean, it's probably the biggest one that's been in the Wairarapa, so we're pretty happy. But take your point, Tony.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions or discussion for Corin? Somebody prepared to move? We receive the report. Yep. Councillor Turner, secondly Councillor Johnson. No further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And thank you, Corin, for the very comprehensive report. Tremendous, and all your staffs that are involved. We now go to Karen for the Strategy, Policy and Governance Activity Report. 30 seconds.
Thank you, Worship. I'll be very quick and just pick up on a point that we talked about earlier around the climate change work. Just adjacent to that, the National Reform Programme continues at pace. We have national direction on the RMA reforms that are out for consultation at the moment, and our teams in the planning department and in our policy and strategic teams are having a look at what those proposals are. You'll know on a daily basis there's new proposals. The latest one was around the institutional arrangements and whether there should be regional councils or not. So these are quite broad reforms and something that we are going to keep a close eye on. We did make a submission from one extreme to another on the granny flats proposals from the building perspective, and we'll report that back through the audit and risk report. Another part of the reforms, the Local Government Systems Improvement Bill, that is due in June, and we do anticipate that it will be with us shortly, and that is again around removing the well-beings and focusing local government to core services. Part of that work, we've been provided with some draft metrics for comparison on our performance, our council performance against other small provincial and rural councils, and their metrics around demographics and spend. We've provided some comments back to DIA on those, and we understand that they will be coming out shortly. So picking up on the climate change work, under the umbrella of our spatial plan, I know the Chief Executive has got some discussion around that, so I won't steal his thunder, but part of, so the spatial plan is a very broad umbrella blueprint for what we and the community wants for Masterton over the next 30 to 50 years. We're just kicking off that scoping work now. There's lots of work streams underneath that. One of those is our climate change work. We're working with the Wellington Regional Councils on a project on regional adaptation planning, and that's looking at our natural hazards and how we respond to those natural hazards and trying to be as consistent as we possibly can across the Wellington region, anticipating those RMA changes, which will be looking at having a national adaptation plan and requiring local adaptation plans to respond to that, and a regional spatial plan. So looking at things like what are our hazards around flooding, earthquakes, our coastal management, so picking up again on that road prioritisation, what does it mean for us and the infrastructure that we provide, and how do we respond in a policy way and in a budgetary funding way. So all of this work is going on. There's lots and lots of different pieces of work, so we will be bringing more to you on those particular projects, and like I say, around that spatial planning our Chief Executive will pick up on. Any questions?
Any questions? Jack then Marama. Jack. Sorry.
I'll put my question to you in the right place. Do you have any idea what the mobility parking piece was for the requirement?
My understanding, Councillor, is that it was a very specific requirement, a request around information around what the standards are around mobility parking and what we apply across the council for when we mark up parking spaces.
Thank you.
Jack.
Thank you for the report. I guess just a key question around RMA reforms. Clearly the proposed reforms will have an impact on your interests, and for the moment I'm very keen to understand the process of engagement that count officers are working through to ensure that iwi input and a view is expressed. So would you like to just step us through those arrangements at this point?
Of course. We had a presentation to Council last week, officers, on the high-level reforms as we understand how they will transpire. We haven't got the detail yet through the bill, and the devil is in the detail. And as I said, there's information coming out on what the government's looking at, but until we actually see that, we we will not be, in a position to actually put together a submission, but we certainly will be working with iwi representatives and our partners there, both on a local level and on a regional level. So I've been in discussions with my counterparts across the district and the regional council around how we respond as a region as well, so that that we have commonalities, so it makes sense to have a common voice. So we're keeping a watching brief until that bill comes out, and that's what the government call the tranche 3. So they will be what the replacement for the RMA looks like within those two, the planning and the environmental pieces of legislation, and what those institutional arrangements are that will deliver that. And that's where there is that reform about whether there is a regional council to deliver on those environmental provisions, or if not, where would it go. So Cabinet has made some decisions on moving ahead with particular parts like the national direction, which is what we've currently gone out. So that's really detailed information on the national policy statements and the national environmental statements that we're looking at the moment. But those bigger institutional changes are yet to come. But we certainly intend, and I've raised this with our colleagues in both in the iwi trusts.
Yeah, so just one supplementary, just to, I take that to mean that there's careful engagement with whether it's Ngāi or Kahungunu to seek that input and feedback.
Yes, we have had those discussions, and it's around. We'll wait and see. In our relationship meetings that we've had, we've laid out what's coming up, elections, and where we need to make sure that we work together. So it's a wait and see brief at the moment.
Thank you.
Councillor Lennox.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. I guess just around the darts, guys, I'm interested to know how many businesses have engaged in regards to the program, and that might be the next question who's not here, but that's okay. Maybe just come back. So I'm just intrigued from a tourism perspective, how many people are taking on board is really what I want to know. And thirdly, just around that water resilience strategy. So it says here that we'll get given more information following the adoption. When's that going to happen? Because I'm quite keen to see what the detail is inside that wonderful document.
I wonder if we could ask
Mr.
our
Holmes?
councillor, the chair of the Water Resilience
When will that be
Group,
adopted, and when will we get to see it and read it?
Well, I suspect it will be adopted for the next meeting, which is early in July.
Okay. Cool, thank you.
Any further questions for Karen? Jack?
Karen, on dark skies, certainly within Rangitani we've had significant discussions around the potential there to develop initiatives that benefit our wider community and iwi. And those conversations are ongoing, but just to confirm the importance of that project, and also to make you aware of the ongoing discussions within Rangitani to see what opportunities align with our future business and economic developments. I think it's an enormously positive area of development for the community, and we positioning ourselves to contribute to that space. So, really keen to hear in future what the opportunities are for engagement and what's happening in that space.
Kia ora, thank you. That's really great to hear, and I know that Matt has been having discussions through Destination Wider Upper as well around what those opportunities are, and we're very excited about that project and the opportunities in Queensland. So thank you for those comments.
Councillor Gorman.
Obviously I was very pleased with the economic comments, 24 to 29. It was good to see the staff telling us how bad the economy has been, rather than trying to gloss over it or anything. I did just wonder why this report didn't come up prior to the annual plan discussion, because it's not important what you say.
Because that's the order of the agenda. We have decision reports before we have information reports, but the information was available to you through the agenda.
Well, it's fair to say you could have brought it up there anyway, if you wanted to.
Okay. Somebody prepared to move we received the report from Karen?
Yep.
Moved Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Holmes. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Karen. Infrastructure and assets report, Matt.
Kia ora, afternoon, Worship Councillors. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to take the report as being read. There are a number of highlights in there, but one that I do want to mention is last month I reported that Kane and his team were actually successful in an award for projects under $2 million. That was great. They have been nominated again with a different organisation, and it is also for an excellence award. So he will be attending that in July, so super excited and pleased about that. So happy to take questions if...
Thank you, Maz. Right, questions, Councillor Lillings.
Thanks, Maz, and congratulations on your nomination and your award. I have lots of questions, but I'm actually going to email you separately because some of them are not so relevant around here. However, my question was around the Coburn strategy project is near complete. Now, the holding tanks and valves, as far as I remember, were always seen as a temporary solution. Yes. So, given that the strategy project is near completion, have we got a more permanent solution for the temporary solution?
Well, the permanent solution is all of the asset replacement and maintenance and investigation work that we've done. Yep. So we can prove that, we're in a really good position. We've had lots of events and the network has survived really well. We know that infrastructure was temporary, and we do have a plan to have that removed. I think it's like February next year, but there was an agreement that would be in place for a couple of years, I think.
Awesome, that's great, thank you. I just wanted confirmation there. And just around the Wainuiru scheme, do you see any, obviously, once the plan's submitted,
yes,
the costs around the remedial work around, is that going to be a huge cost to ratepayers?
No, it won't be cost to ratepayers, it will be a cost to those particular users. And Tamara Arawai at the moment are calling for submissions on what they are currently drafting in terms of the quality assurance rules for mixed use schemes, and so we have submitted on that. But for those users, it could be, maybe $3,000 to $5,000 to get that barrier in place.
Okay, cool. So it's, perfect. That's good. And one more question just around the town hall, and it might answer a few queries. Mm-hmm. But obviously the demolition work,
yes,
the sort of figure of between 3.6 and 4 million is thrown around quite often here and outside. And my question is this. So obviously Kim it goes to tender, mm-hmm. We get some quotes back, and then it can be signed off for whatever the price is. Mm-hmm. My question today is there any indication that that demolition work will be around the figure that seems to be thrown about, 3.6 to 4 million, or will it?
It's too hard to say at this time. So, that's why we go to the market. That will tell us, that will tell us the price of the work, essentially.
So my last question then, just for reassurance, is that, so say we go out to market and it comes back far greater than what we ever imagined, we then will still discuss that as elected members?
We would have to bring that back because, that could be a significant departure from what you have approved. But if it's over $1 million, it will need to come back for you to delegate the rights for Kim to sign that off anyway.
Okay, so if the demolition quotes come back over $1 million, it then goes to Kim?
Yep, we do the evaluation process. We work out who we think the contract should be awarded to. Yep. That comes to you guys as per what you did with Morley Park the other day.
Yep.
And then we would ask you to resolve to allow Kim to sign that on your behalf.
Okay, thank you. I just think it's really important to have clarification around that so people understand the process.
Councillor Johnson.
Sorry, I'm just going to clarify, that, as I said previously, the resolution that you gave earlier was to demolish the town hall and to proceed with concept plans. So council has given direction to demolish the town hall. Unless there's anything outside the CE's delegation, so under Local Government Act, the CE has to implement your decisions. He doesn't need to come back to get that second approval. However, if there are delegations around contract approval that we need to get this outside of the CE's delegations, then he will do that. But in terms of project planning, then we will keep you up to date with project planning, just to be really clear on direction.
So that means the paper that we would bring back would be a recommendation on who to award the contract to, not whether it should be awarded.
No, that's fine. But
Councillor Johnson?
Yep.
Hi, Maz. Thanks. 3 questions. I noticed the Heritage Architect tender has closed, and the QS one is closing today. So my question is, have we had a healthy response to that? That's my first question.
I couldn't tell you right now, given that the one closed yesterday. Was it yesterday? So, yeah, that was yesterday, so I don't know. Lisa, do you have an answer for that?
The second question is the Kiwi Park Pavilion. Do we have any ideas for the space that's going to be left?
Do you have any ideas, Ian? I've not been across
Because I mean that'll be an
detail.
interest.
Yep.
So where the tennis pavilion came down,
Yep.
so through the LTP presentations that we had in 2024,
Yeah.
Warwick highlighted an area as being
Of interest?
of interest to them for their project to develop indoor training space, and we've had discussions with the Bowls Club and that Queensland. And,
So what's
and they're happy to look at reducing their lease size and removing that lower ring.
So what's the process moving forward for that space then?
Well, Warwick, but at this stage, we've got car park renovation work to do in Burnsville Park still, so it's going to give us the opportunity for alternative parking in the short term. Warwick Cricket obviously got some work to do around their proposal.
So are we offering it up as a place of interest for registrations of interest, or are we only talking to one party?
At this stage, it's open for interest.
Not if nobody knows about it though.
We haven't, Ian and I haven't had a discussion around, how do we actually structure the scope and decision on that, but we will do, and giving you
so
the
that's
update.
just my question. And the third question is the tree removals in Meadow Street, are the residents going to be advised of that?
Yes, they are.
Any further questions? Councillor Taylor.
Hi, Lisa, thank you. I'll just ask one of my 3 questions. On page 311, you've got dam survey. Can you tell me what that's about?
It's a compliance check, really. The legislation specifies a number of things that defines what a dam is, and if your source or your supply is deemed to be a dam, then you've got to go through various checks and balances. And I think it is an exercise that council had not done historically. So we've now done that, we know what our position is, and we're waiting a report. Could be some work that's required to ensure we comply.
I was getting all excited. I thought it was Kaituna.
Ah, sorry, I don't know. It's compliance.
Councillor Bayer.
Maz, thank you for the report. This is probably a Kane question, but I saw him drop out. Hopefully, talks under unsealed roads, blah, 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 blah. A program to reinstate old dust seals on unsealed roads is also in development. So we're just putting back some seal.
I don't know. I will come back to you on that one.
And previously, I thought, if you had a house out wherever, you could request that council put down some seal, and they paid for it. I'm just wondering how this mechanism's.
What, the individual paid for it?
Yeah. Oh, no. Pardon? Yeah, you used to oil these, put oil down there for the dust.
I'm happy to come back to you on both those points.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Nelson?
Can this be discussions as well, or just questions?
Yeah, questions and discussions.
Just looking at the water measures, it's great to see that council seems to be on top of pretty much all of them. And it must feel really good to have such certainty about our water infrastructure. And Stella raised before the complex situation with Coburn Street, which seems to have been resolved really effectively by this council. And I just want to compliment the council for managing water on its own so effectively and with so much certainty.
Thank you, Councillor.
Any further comments and discussion? Somebody move the report. Move Councillor Lennox, second Councillor Holmes. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Right, CE's report.
Your Worship, I think we might just take the report as read simply because of time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the CE? We have got time
Just
for
one.
Councillor Lennox.
In your
Stand
report,
up.
you, apologies, in your report you requested that councillors be involved in that central, because I would like to put my hand up when the time comes.
That's great.
Any further comments? Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, that civil aviation, that RESA decision must be terribly disappointing in that we, I don't know, maybe I need an explanation, but we've spent all this money and where are we, where's the game?
Yeah, the RESA was more about looking at whether we can accommodate larger aircraft into Hood. And clearly if we had an extra half a kilometre of runway and didn't have to take out Mania Road, we'd be able to achieve that. So we were, I suppose, essentially looking at whether we had a strong enough safety case to be able to have a 90-metre limitation. And that threshold is so difficult through that process, and being able to, I suppose, validate every possible option. And the feedback really was that cost should not be a matter in that. So to me, I think it is a matter, and for this council, and so therefore we could continue to explore this. We could continue to divert Mania Road and look at other options. I think that the gain is going to be too small, but it was certainly worth a try. If anything, what has occurred is that there is an airline talking about their 34-seater, reducing that down to 30 seats so that they can still fly the same size aircraft into Hood as an option. I don't think it's wasted money at all, and the investment, if you recall, was $10 million from the government. $7 million from the council, I believe. We've spent about just over $5 million in that. We've got a significantly improved runway and a more safer runway than we have ever had. And now that leaves us, I suppose, with some other options potentially that we can bring back to the council for future development around hangar space and other supporting services. So I certainly don't think it was a wasted exercise. I think it was an exercise that needed to be done, because the opportunities, it could have unlocked more opportunities for Hood. But without doing it, we wouldn't have known.
Thank you. Councillor Lennox.
Yeah, thank you. Come on, the question just around the passenger service. Are we, once that certification is good to go, will we be then creating some juicy tender, a proposal to give up to the world and hopefully attract some
We'll certainly be contacting, and we are in dialogue anyway with a number of airlines, so we need to get that certification done first, which is quite important. And we are a long way through that, aren't we, Maz? We're probably looking at September where we'll find out whether we are certified, but a lot of the work's done, a huge amount of work.
Just because we're ready to fly off.
Absolutely, and
there
are airlines who are keen to have that conversation.
Awesome.
So we'll continue it.
That's great stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, just on Councillor Goodwin's comments, the RESA is what it is. It's always been the same length. We've got a road at one end, we've got a river at the other. Nothing's actually changed. The work that has been done is for certification. Certification is irrelevant to the size of the RESA. If they LifeFlight used to have to get an exemption to fly in because that safety space is too short. So we went to CAA and said, well, hang on, will you accept it and provide a permanent exception? And they've said, no, it's business as usual. We're open for business. We're one step away from the final inspection from CAA. We're hopefully, and they have indicated that they see no problems, that then they'll tick the box for certification, then we're open for business, planes up to 30 people. If anyone thought we were going to fill more than that, I won't say they're dreaming, but that's a possibility. We're open for business. Let's get registrations of interest and let's get cranking. Nothing's changed. It's not a mind you, he's the black hat of our council team. But I'm excited. One more step and Hood's certified, and the work's been done. Great stuff.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Any further comments for the CE? No further comments. Somebody prepared to move the CE's report? Move Councillor Holmes, second Councillor Lennox. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Do we have any councillors' reports?
I've just got a quick one,
Yeah.
very quick. Last Tuesday, a week ago, Yoni and I spoke on the resilience to the Moana Statutory Board. Marama was there and so was Robin. It was a really good morning, and I just want to express just how important water resilience and water storage and everything is, and it is becoming, because we got it, loud and clear from those people there that we've got to do something, otherwise we're just not going to survive.
Thank you, Darren.
Short and sweet.
Any further councillors' reports? No further, thank you for that. The Mayor's report, I had a few pages here, I'm keeping it really short. There's been a lot happening outside council work since the last meeting. I'll just mention a couple, Pukaha and Hansels. Pukaha, I can't believe the support we've had for the decision we made. It's been tremendous. Had comments from all over New Zealand actually, from people saying, well done to the council on getting in behind Pukaha. I can tell you without getting into any information at all on it that things are going really well with the other one or two big announcements that will be made. They'll be made in the next few days. I've been told that things are going along swimmingly and everything's on track. The Hansels one, of course, was great news in the sense that the 50 staff there are retaining their jobs. Kim and I had and it was a pleasure to meet with Harry Hart, who was one of the principals at Walter and Wild, or the principal really. And one of the things that come out of that was his willingness to also look at supporting Masterton Council in other projects and other community events. So we were very quick to say, well, we'll take him up on that. And he seemed very genuine. So I think that's going to be a really good relationship between us and councillors. The volunteer thing I was going to mention, but it's already been mentioned how terrific it was, and thanks particularly to the staff there, Jen and Deb, who did an absolutely tremendous job. Again, we got great appreciation of the efforts. The World Refugee Day event on Sunday, which was organised by a couple of the refugees, people themselves, was absolutely amazing. Big crowd there, great music, great food. And really made, I think, the decision from this council to join that refugee resettlement program. It just showed how good that decision was. And these refugees are adding a lot to our community, both just in the diversity, the cultural, and I think those of us who were there and listened to the speeches of a couple of the refugees who come from some pretty horrific stories. And they're just so grateful for us putting them up here in Masterton. So really, really positive there. And finally, congratulations to one of our councillors here, Stell. Councillor Lennox, on being chosen as one of the 4 finalists for the Superhuman Award at the National LG Conference in Christchurch. I personally nominated Stella for that. I know that Bex and some of the staff have got part of the video presentation, and it's a very impressive video presentation. So Stella, I know you're up against 3 deputy mayors, which is tough opposition, but look, I know you're going to do really well, and it's a real credit to you that you've made the final. So
thanks, boss.
Congratulations. Okay, that's my report. I don't need to receive that bill, do I receive it? Oh, somebody moved the bill. Move Councillor Johnson, secondly Councillor Bayou. All those in favour? Aye. Aye. Somebody move. We move into public excluded.
Yep.
Move Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Bayou. All those in favour? Aye. Say aye. Thank you.